Hello everybody, and welcome to a new video series that we at the Paperverse are doing. This is going to be episode, I'll call it 1.5 of the Paper Peeps Podcast. We had a previous episode, but due to technical snags, I'm still working on it, so it won't be going out anytime soon. But we'll just start fresh and call this episode 1 instead. For those unaware, my name is Jeeve. I'm the project coordinator for the Paperverse and also the lead developer for Tales from Alteria. Very exciting stuff all around. Usually what I do is come direct season when we start working on our next large project or showcase, I'll canvas around looking for new developers to invite, looking for different community members to interact with. All in all, it's a very fun time and I enjoy what I do. But today, as part of that kind of developer outreach mindset, I'm joined by 3 awesome developers to kind of talk about the state of the games industry as a whole right now. It's interesting because when you think of game development, for a long time, I would say most of it was not shrouded in mystery, but really on a need-to-know basis because the kind of work that we do, it's typically confidential on some levels. So it's just recently I've noticed that there's been a huge push to kind of demystify things and have just a clearer line of communication between players and developers. And that's really exciting to me. That's what we're here to talk about. Really briefly, I'm joined by 2 sets of awesome developers, the Mogrimera Team and Matt from Video Game Fables, both of which were in the 2022's Direct. And I'll let them introduce themselves. But getting started, every episode I want to go over the overarching theme and just kind of a subset of questions that we'll focus on and kind of keep in the background as we discuss our topics. And today's overarching theme is the state of the market. See, game development and the industry as a whole has always been shifting and changing. It's never static. What worked yesterday may not be valid today. So please think of this, not just those who I have on the panel, but viewers as well, as we move through our focus questions. Now, for introductions, I've already introduced myself, so why don't you take the floor, Charles, and introduce yourself again, please?
For sure. Hi guys, my name is Charles. I'm one of the lead developers for Mogrimera Disciple of Order. I do pretty much anything from PR to programming to designing.
And hello, I'm Kristen Schaefer. I'm the other half of the Mogrimera main development team. I'm the lead artist, and I basically create all of the assets and the various things that you see on screen.
Hey, I'm Matt. I do all the things for Video Game Fables, except for music, which is done by someone I commissioned. So I'm a solo developer. The game is out now on Steam. It's super cool. I know it's not introducing myself, but you know.
That's quite alright. You can show all you want. So kind of an icebreaker, what kind of games we've been playing recently. I'll go first. I've been playing 2 games, mostly Monster Hunter Wings of Ruin. Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin. That name's a mouthful. I was actually kind of surprised. That is a really fun paper, rock, scissors type JRPG. A lot more deep than I thought it would be. I picked it up when it was on sale. I'm having a blast with it so far. I'm always stealing time out of, whatever I'm doing to try to get more time in. I love grinding and finding different gene types for my monsters. I wasn't big on Pokemon. It never super clicked with me, but this game really does. So I'm happy that I found it and it was on sale. And then I've also been playing Contract Killer again a lot. I was doing some work for that video I wrote for the channel not too long ago, probably about 2 weeks from when this video was posted. So that was really fun. Me and another member in the server played versus mode on there, and they beat me quite a bit. I'm not as good at video games as I thought I was, so that's also fun as well. But how about you guys? What have you guys been playing?
Definitely. 2 of the games I've been playing, one has been Splatoon 3, awesome game, absolutely love it, very fun online battle system there. And then the other one that I got was it was a new release recently, early access. It's Slime Rancher 2. I'm genuinely surprised at the sound design in that game, as well as a lot of the effects that they do. It's just an all-around beautiful game. Also, that tile sequence, it's up there on the Kingdom Hearts 2 tile sequence level.
So I really don't end up playing a whole lot of games. The last game I played was actually one that I played on the stream that me and Charles do. So I just pulled out a game from 2004 called Amazing Island, and I played a bit of that, and me and the stream created some monsters and played some mini games. It was very fun.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with Kristen. Like, I just haven't had much time, honestly, for a few years to play a lot of games. And I've been kind of doing in like the post-release hectic phase right now, doing like a lot of marketing and like updates and all that stuff, and working on like new content for October. But I've been trying to like get back into playing games because it's like what makes me happy, and I've been neglecting that for a couple years. You know, working on this game all the time. So like lately, I started playing Etrian Odyssey 3 because I had played all the other games like 2 years ago. I got into them, and I never played through 3, so I've been working on that. And then on like the complete opposite side of the spectrum, a game I play that I can play with my friends. I've been playing Fortnite lately. So two very, very drastically unexpected different games. Like people would hear that and be like, okay, are you sure not talking about two different people with different tastes, or like it's the same person? Yeah, so I'm very chaotic now that I'm finally making time to play games again. As you can tell.
Wow.
Yeah, very chaotic energy.
Definitely.
Isn't that the one people don't like? Like when you talk about the Etrian Odyssey games, isn't 3 the one people don't really care for?
I think it's actually the one people like. Generally one of the higher regarded ones. I'm pretty sure. I'm not in like I am on like the Reddit, but I don't like participate a lot. But it seems like 3 is pretty well liked.
Oh, okay, interesting. And then Splatoon 3, that's on my radar, but I don't know if I'll ever get around to it anytime soon. Like I played Splatoon 2 at launch, and I was really good. But I think I took a 2-week break because I got busy, and then when I came back, everyone had just surpassed me, and the whole meta for the game had changed. Now it was over; I couldn't jump it anymore. So I feel like I almost missed the boat with 3.
Those kinds of games are like jobs.
Yeah, pretty much.
They really do.
Yeah, and I just don't have time for another job.
Yeah.
But pretty great recommendations all around. I'll have to try 3 when I have a chance. I think. What system was that one on again?
Come on, Etrian Odyssey?
It's this
3.
Or Splatoon?
I'm talking about Etrian Odyssey 3.
Oh, okay, we had 2 3s. I was a little confused.
That's okay.
Yeah, Etrian Odyssey's on 3 is on DS. It's the only one that didn't have that wasn't on 3DS, because like 1 and 2 have remakes on 3DS, and 4, 5, and Nexus are native to 3DS. So it's also very expensive. So let's just say I'm poor, so I did not purchase it, and that's all I'll say on the matter. And we'll leave it at that.
Did you play the Persona Q games?
No.
Q2, and they're supposed to be really like Etrian Odyssey. I haven't played Etrian ET game for years, so it's been a while, but I actually did like Q2. So,
yeah, I haven't played them. I'll probably do that like after I beat 3, Etrian Odyssey 3, because I feel like I'll get that fix again, you know, for something new. So I'll probably try them.
Okay, it's pretty good. And well, to pivot off, you briefly mentioned that post-hectic release state, and that plays into our first focus question, which is, we always hear about how rough it is to market a project. In fact, all of us here have our own struggles with that in one way, shape, or form. But what have we found to be the most effective in our experiences? And I put down there like anecdotal evidence is fine. I'm not asking for NPD numbers or anything like that. But what do you guys think? I'll let you go first, Matt, because this is probably the most relevant for you.
Yeah, well, marketing's like a living hell, so it's cool. I've always struggled with marketing. It's like my weakest point of game development. It's a little frustrating because it's like I'm at the point now, like 2 months after release, where I have a lot of reviews out. Like I've busted my butt contacting thousands of people, and like I've got good like critic reviews and user reviews. Generally stays around like an 8 out of 10, that range. but then it's just like the sales numbers just aren't great, and I know that's not because I didn't make a good game now, but it's because my marketing sucks. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like it's a hard place to be in where I'm really trying to work on that and figure it out. But I think like the thing that's worked the best for me, even though nothing's working like super great, is streamers. I think that's been the most productive thing. But again, it's sometimes hard to get metrics back, unless you have a lot of like metric tools like using Google and stuff. It's kind of hard to get exactly where everyone's coming from. But the ones I do know, like anecdotally, are from streamers.
Not bad. And I know it would kind of depend on a game-by-game basis, but I mean, yours leans pretty well into streaming, I would imagine. It's pretty entertaining. Lots of visual stuff going on, so it's not too bad. Okay, it's good to hear. What about you guys, Charles? Because you guys have, well, I know you, Charles, have released the games before, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I'll let Charles mostly handle this one.
Yeah, I'll kind of take over for this one. So, like Jeeve was saying, I have released a game before. Matt, congratulations, you made sales. That game and a couple of other projects definitely did not. I've worked for a couple of other studios as well, too, and my marketing game has gotten a lot better than what it has previously been. I think definitely social media and influencers are definitely the top-notch way to go nowadays. Streamers as well, too. And if you can, save a little bit of money. I know $200 is a lot to like just dip into the pool, but if you save like $20 a month, 10 months, buy yourself an influencer, get some more views, add to some more sales. And when I was working with a couple of companies as well too, I noticed something huge. Once you get partnered up with like a bigger company or system in general, you usually have contacts to their marketing teams, etc. And what a lot of these smaller indie studios would do is that they would be almost buddy-buddy with their marketing team. And that would help out quite a bit as well too, in terms of knowing when to release, when to update, when to do posts, what's the best time, when or what convention to go to, and stuff like that.
That's a good point to bring up. Yeah, because at least from what I've seen, marketing itself seems like basically what you put in is what you get out. But it seems like the dynamic is shifting to where you really should be putting in a lot of money to get the results out that you want. I don't know, at least that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think yeah. From what I've heard and what I've seen, it's definitely possible to do it just on your own and not spending a lot of money. But it's a little frustrating when a lot of times you'll get on like Reddit or Twitter, or like you'll try to get some advice from other people, and they'll just be like, "Oh, well, I was just rich." You know what I mean? Like that's not what they say, obviously, but like they'll be like, "Yeah, I just spent like $1,000 on this or like a couple $100 on this," and it's like, "Oh, okay." I understand, like, yeah, and it's like I understand they're not doing it maliciously, but it's like, and whether that's true or not, it's kind of like it's a little frustrating sometimes, a little disheartening sometimes to hear that it's like the solution is to have money. You know what I mean? But I think it's definitely possible without that. It's just probably a little harder, I think.
Definitely. And I'd also like to add on, make sure that you're making that, even a small amount of money, like $100, make sure you're making that $100 work for you. Don't just toss it at somebody and call it a day. Make sure you're budgeting and pushing it out as much as it can go. That's the real key.
And do some research to see where the players that will play your game in the first place are even going to hang out. Like, it doesn't do you any good to put like an advertisement on Facebook if like only older people use Facebook and your game is for like children or something.
Yeah,
I think one thing I've been trying to work on and figure out, and like I've talked to other people, is like something, for example, like an email subject line to like get people to actually click it. Because what I found is like a lot of the times when I get a response, it's positive, but then it's like you get these like bigger streamers and bigger like YouTubers and content creators, and a lot of times they won't even reply. And it's not like, I'm not saying that in a bad way, because I know they're very busy and they have so many emails and stuff coming in, so it's not like I'm saying it like I'm upset about it, but I'm just saying it's so hard to like stand out from the crowd. And I think that's something that's important, and I think it's something that everyone should work on. I'm definitely trying to work on, is like, how do you even get this big streamer to click your email when he has when they have 300 emails when they wake up in the morning. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's a very real question because, like, developing the game is pretty much only half the battle if you're trying to go commercial. Because, I mean, look, we all love the art form. We all want to do it for passion, but it would be nice to, you know, sell a couple units. You guys, you get what I'm saying? You know, that would be nice. So that's a struggle. And I'm not okay. So I released one game myself, and I'm with you, Charles. I think I sold like literally 2 copies on itch for that game. But with my main project now, I'm really kind of behind on marketing. And it's really difficult. I don't know how Matt, you do it, being a like solo dev and, you know, having to grind and market. Because for me, I had to pick one. I was like, okay, either I can market the game or I can make it. So I focused on making it, and I got, like I said, I'm very blessed to be in the Paperverse, and you guys helped out a lot as far as like pushing the game when it was in like the Kickstarter phase. So, you know, I made it. I got funded, which was a miracle in and of itself. But, you know, seeing how hard it is to market post-release is something I'm really worried about, and how effective I can be, you know. So that's why I have the question there, and it's good to get you guys' input because, you know, as the overarching theme says, things are always changing in game development. You know, the methods that we used yesterday, last week, you know, they're probably not going to work maybe tomorrow or the week thereafter. So it's always good to make sure that we're being cognizant of that and understanding how to ride the wave, because this is a very volatile market. You know, I don't want to, you know, mislead anybody and think that when it comes to game development, it's very static and stable. It's not. You see, quite often things are always changing, and it's good to stay abreast of it. It really is.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of. It's important to like catch yourself when you're having kind of like a boomer moment where you're just trying to market in a certain way, and because that's what you think works, you know. And it's very hard to like humble yourself, and like I know for me it's hard to like humble myself and say this probably isn't a way to do it because it's not working, you know. And it's hard to it's hard to humble yourself and do that. I think you know like what I mean by that is like in extreme cases, you know, you'll meet business owners who don't even advertise online now. You know, they just send out like mail or something. It's like, and it's easy to look at that because it's such an extreme. But then I think we don't notice the smaller gaps that we have, you know, because we're like, well, I use the internet. I'm not like those people, those businesses or whatever. But then it's like, okay, but are you using like Facebook, like you said earlier? Like it's like, am I relying on Facebook because that's what I knew growing up, as opposed to like TikTok, which is like the biggest one right now. You know what I mean? So it's like you got to catch yourself in those little, what I call like boomer moments, where you're kind of stuck in the past, even if the past isn't as far back as some other people are. You know, you still got to kind of catch yourself.
Yeah,
I spent like.
Oops, sorry. I was going to mention I had a moment like that where I talked to someone younger than me and they didn't even know what DeviantArt was, but they were like, but I have a TikTok. And it's like, people don't even use DeviantArt? Like, what in the world?
Yeah.
Yeah, I spent like 3 hours trying to get an Instagram account to post something. I'm like, how do you post on Instagram? Please, thank you. What's a TikTok? Where do I go?
I will say from my experience just posting, because I basically post like the same things somewhat across social media. I'm most active on Twitter because I like the ability to like at least have like text posts and like communicate back and forth better than you can on TikTok.
Yeah.
But I will say from my experience, which is pretty limited, is it was much easier to get higher numbers on TikTok than it was on any other social media by far. Mm-hmm. I just think TikTok is literally just a bigger platform. So I think it's just easier to get higher numbers. But I did notice a fall off though. And obviously there's so many different factors that go into something like this. Like it's so anecdotal, and it's, you know, you'd have to talk to someone who studied marketing for 10 years to really understand why that is. But I know for me, anecdotally, TikTok did have a big fall off where I'd be posting like the same videos on Twitter and TikTok. And then I think I think at that point when I started using TikTok, I got like I think it was like 500 followers within just like a month or something. Oh, and wow. I was only at like 200 on Twitter after using it for like 2 years. But then my TikTok new followers just completely stagnated, and like it hasn't gone up at all. And then my Twitter went up to like I don't know what it is, like 1,200 or something right now. So I don't know if you guys have any insight into why that would be, or if you've had similar experiences. And like I said, obviously there's so many factors that go into that, so it's hard to take this anecdote and just like make something out of it, but there might be something there to pick apart, you know?
Well, when did you notice the stagnation? Because at least here in the US, they were passing that legislation against TikTok not too long ago. So that could have something to do with it. There was that big scare that it was going to get banned here in the States.
I remember that. I wonder if that was around the same time. I don't remember. Could be part of that. But it was, it was in a time where I was posting I don't know if you've seen them, but I had like those 30 like under 60-second videos, and I have like a playlist with just like little informational things, and like they were just like not picking up on TikTok at all. And it was very frustrating because it's like, people say like TikTok is very good for marketing, which it is. And it's like people want like short, bite-sized videos they can just process really quickly. And I did that, and it was like, it's frustrating when you don't get the results that you're told you're going to get,
Yeah.
Yeah.
TikTok too is really volatile. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to begin, honestly, on a platform like that. Because, you're talking about trends that change like by the hour almost. One hour the kids are doing this, and the next hour it's something new. I couldn't keep up. I'm not old. Like, I know I probably sound old, but I'm not.
You said the kids. I don't know what you held.
It's the day job. It's the day job I have with kids. So, it's hard. It's so hard to keep up. So I commend you for sticking it out, but I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if I could do it.
Yeah, well, I think it's also, like I said earlier, it's like you're forced to do video content, and video content naturally just takes significantly longer to do than just like a text post. And I think working on TikTok marketing, no matter what field you're in, no matter what industry it is, it's just going to be naturally just take more hours. Like that's all it is. It comes down to. It just takes longer and it's more work. Whereas you can just put out a 2-sentence on Twitter with some hashtags. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. That's true. What are you gonna say, Charles? Before I rudely interrupt you?
Oh, you're fine. Yeah, so Instagram, I noticed something similar to what Matt was saying. I use social media pusher apps, I guess what they call it, where it multi-posts to multiple services. Very, very helpful. But I noticed something odd. So we originally had like 5 social media accounts at one point. Tumblr, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. TikTok actually had quite a few views initially starting out, and I only posted maybe 1 video before the account got locked out because of no use. And then Twitter was probably my second. It's now currently the most popular one for Mogdu, at least. But Instagram was up there for bits. And the sucky part is kind of what Jeeves, like you were saying, the market is just so volatile because I found a key. I posted a video, it got like 16,000 views. I was super hyped. I did the same exact thing twice, got another 16,000 views, posted something else entirely different, got 8,000 views, and then it was stagnated down to like maybe 14 views. And I'm like, what's going on here? This is just odd.
Yeah, I'm assuming like the algorithms, I'm not going to pretend I know how social media algorithms work, but it seems to me from a business point of view for social media, it's probably something about like if they're showing your video like on a discovery feed and it's not getting as many interactions, they'll probably start showing it to less people. So I think it's just like a bad kind of cycle, you know what I mean? Like if people aren't clicking it, then people aren't going to click your new ones. It's kind of like a downward spiral, I guess. That's how I assume it would work, because if you think about social media as a industry, the entire profit of a social media site comes from users being on there longer. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like,
right, yeah,
that's why everything revolves around is it's that profit motive. You have to keep people on there longer. So it's like if there's like a video that isn't doing as well as like maybe like a person's past video, they're probably going to stop showing that person's stuff in general as much as they used to. Maybe, I don't know for sure, but it seems to me logically that's how it would work.
That's how it works.
Definitely, and I think you're definitely on the nail on that one.
So it's kind of like if you have like one video that's not as good, you kind of like you get screwed over for the next several videos. It's a bad cycle.
Definitely.
Pretty much a catch-22. It's like, okay, to do better, you need people to click on your videos, but if they don't engage with it, then you're gonna do worse. They can do better. So it's pretty rough. But yeah, it's pretty good. I guess only like sub question I would attach to this is okay. So that's how it is marketing by ourselves. Now, how do you feel about relying like on publishers and firms to do it for you? Because we know the catch with that is that typically you're going to be paying out of whatever revenue is generated from your project. So like for a new project signing on with, let's just say like a mid-sized publisher, like your AA type company, you're probably looking at a what, like 50, no, it's gonna be really close. It's gonna be like 50 or like 50 49, no, what is that rate? It's really close, like a 55 45, something like that. The point is, it's going to be like a really, really close revenue cut. And that's kind of the concession you make when you rely on a larger publisher or a firm to do it for you. And that's viable for some, not viable for others. Some people know what they have. Others, don't, or they say, hey, it's worth the cut. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I've never worked with a publisher, but I've spoken to other developers who have. And I, like, looking back, I wish I did try to get a publisher. I think I was very stubborn and wanted to do everything on my own, which I did concede for the music of the game. But otherwise, I was just very, very stubborn. I wanted to release like a big game on my own, and then maybe next time try to get a publisher. But I think knowing that marketing wasn't a great strength for me, I think I really kind of screwed myself over. Because, if you think about it, like, even if it was like a 50-50 split, if you're making 10 times the sales you would have by yourself, you're still making significantly more money,
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so it seems to me that if you don't have like some kind of solid history of marketing and doing well with it, then I would think try to get a publisher. And obviously not everyone will be able to get a publisher. I'm not saying you can just say I'm going to get a publisher and it just happens, but I'm saying I think anyone who is trying to make a game, if you do not have a solid history of marketing, try to get a publisher, because I think it would just be worth it. Because if you're going to get 50 sales in a year or something, would you rather have that or do a 50-50 split and get like 10,000 sales in a year or something? You know what I mean? It's just mathematically, I just think I would say just go for it and try to get a publisher.
Definitely, and I would 100% agree with that as well too. Go with a publisher. More often than not, in order to even get to that step, you have to do a lot of research in your own project, what kind of revenue you're looking at, etc. And they're going to be doing the same. A big thing with a publisher as well too is not only do they help with the marketing, but they also help with getting you tied with other companies like Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, and they'll also help lead the way into additional things like potentially developing for those systems, as well as getting on their storefronts, and really open up a whole world of revenue that was not really available to you if you weren't working with one. A major positive as well too is like Matt was saying, the amount that you're going to be selling is almost sextupling up there in the counts, where previously you might sell maybe 100, 200 copies. You're now looking at 10,000 to 20,000, which is definitely up there.
Yeah, it almost seems like even if you were getting ripped off by your publisher, you'd still do better.
Yes.
You could be with the worst publisher ever and probably make more money.
And also, another important thing to note, I guess, is if you look at a game's credits nowadays, maybe the team who actually made the game is like 20 people. The rest of the credits, the thing that you're sitting through for like 2 minutes, is all of the marketing side, the localization side, and everything else that kind of goes on behind the scenes. So getting to work with that nice big team that knows what they're doing really helps, and you can strike gold. A game recently called Stray sparks my mind, and they sold an exorbitant amount of copies on Steam.
Really
that team is, yes,
they're not in the top 10 anymore for Steam charts, but it's still up there. Like if you look at the numbers breakdown, I think they're like 12 or 13. So it's pretty insane. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty great, man. With any other points about that, guys? Oh wow, awesome.
Pretty good.
That actually leads pretty well into our next points about game development. So when I was writing the script, I was looking at just some kind of basic field questions for people that are going for actual game development jobs at larger studios. And apparently, BetterTeam.com said that these basic field questions were used by employers were the most used questions. I've been still trying to independently verify that, but for the most part, they sound pretty good. They cover most industries, most jobs, and they do have a sector for game development, this website. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They have 5 interview questions here, and I thought it'd be kind of cool for us to kind of discuss and go over them, what we think about them. Starting with number 1, what game are you most proud of developing and why? So the note they have for why this question is on the questionnaire is that this question will demonstrate the candidate's knowledge of game design and indicates their programming specialty. Personally, I don't like this question as an interview question. I think this is it's pretty loaded in my opinion, because if you're going for an entry-level job, chances are like you probably haven't developed anything.
I was just gonna say that
substantial enough. So I think this is actually a really bad question, but we can talk about it.
It's you have to have 10 years of experience to get an entry-level job.
Yeah.
I'm legitimately tired of that being such a common thing, because it's like, I don't understand where they think they're getting these people from. Like, you're getting them right out of college. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I had a kind of like a job offer. It's like a contract thing, and I had to fill out like they were like, I talked to the guy and he said like I was hired, but I had to go through the process, the official process and everything. And like it was just frustrating when I'm looking at my like past work history, and it's like it looks almost bad because it's been like one place for like 10 years or something, and it's kind of frustrating because they want like all these references and stuff. It's like, okay, but isn't it also good that I've been like doing a job for this long? You know what I mean? It's kind of frustrating. I don't know. That's more just general workforce stuff, issues.
No, I agree. I just don't know why they think that this question would demonstrate the candidate's like knowledge of game design or indicate their programming specialty. What game are you most proud of developing and why? And I thought it was funny, that's why I added it. What do you think, Charles?
Definitely. I think I'll go on the flip side here. I think it's actually kind of an interesting / nice question. While game, they're probably thinking about fully released. To me, at least, if this was supposed to be an entry-level job, this could be pretty much any project that you did. And it's more so asking, hey, why did you enjoy doing it? I know for me, in my personal experience, I can probably name a couple of projects I've worked on. But yeah, it's a really nice little bit of like an icebreaker-ish question. Not really getting into the nitty-gritty, but just kind of like saying, hey, what's the favorite thing that you've done?
Yeah, I definitely see that. I taught game development at a university for like 4 years, and I guess building on your point, there's students who, I would have like a project for a class. Like one of my classes, I just rearranged the class. So it was literally just a personal project. Like I didn't actually do like tests or anything. I was just like, okay, this class is just going to be you make a project and we just work on it. And, stuff like that. It's like I could really see there was a gap. Like you could see the difference in who's really passionate about and who's really putting in work and making something. And I guess, like you said, Charles, it's like, I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be something that shipped, they could still talk about a project they made and what they did on it. And yeah, so I think I definitely see that side of it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I see that too. I don't know. I try not to lean cynical, but a lot of times when it comes to just like money and time and efficiency, if I were sitting across from a candidate that came up and I had to ask this question 9 times, well, that's anecdotal, but I believe 9 times out of 10, if I'm asking this question, I'm going to be sifting through candidates to see who is the furthest along. So if, I'm interviewing you 3, Charles, you worked on a little prototype project, didn't get anywhere. Kristen, the same thing. But Matt, you've shipped a game, even if it's sold -5 copies. I'm probably going to lean towards you to hire for this position just because out of everybody at the table, you would have gotten the furthest and have the most to offer. I don't know. I mean,
I can totally see that.
You know, it's like I said, I don't lean cynical, but if you're talking about you're trying to hire someone for a position, there's not too many jobs I've gone for, and I can't really speak for the game development sector, but at least in regular workforce type stuff, not too many jobs I've gone for where the icebreaker question didn't have an ulterior motive or wasn't used to prime for something else.
I think the question could be, I think what's interesting is hearing like how you see it, Jeeve, and how you see it, Charles. I think the question could be good or bad depending on the person asking it. I think that's kind of what it comes down to. I think it's like what the interviewer is actually trying to get from it could be negative or positive. If they're saying, well, this person hasn't shipped anything, so they're trash and we're not going to hire them, and they're not going to actually look into work they've done, whether it's shipped or not, then that's probably not a very necessarily a good interviewer, because they're not actually looking for what matters.
Right.
Especially if they're going in for like a development position, not a marketing position. It's like maybe their game didn't sell because they didn't work at marketing, but they're not applying for marketing positions. So I think both your points are very valid. I think it depends on who's doing the interviewing.
Definitely. I'd also like to add on to that. One of the ulterior motives Jeeves mentioned could definitely be, are you going to be decent at making the type of game that we want to make? Is your most proud game going to be a MOBA style? Is it going to be an RPG? Is it going to be an FPS? And why was that your most favorite game? How can we utilize that in our company for X amount of something? Good example, hey, if you do a lot of cool editor stuff and you do a lot of database stuff, that would be great for an RPG game versus a lot of more so like technical procedural animations, which might be great for first person.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a pretty good point, actually. No, I guess it can be taken either way, like Matt was saying. Just I would tread very carefully. I don't know. I'm scarred when it comes to job interviews and stuff. I've had really awful experiences. Just out of curiosity, has anyone ever like gone to an interview, know you did really well, wasn't given the job, but they called back later for some reason to have you come in again?
Yes.
I don't think that's happened to me.
That's happened to you, Charles?
Not that I can remember.
Yes, it's happened to me quite a bit. I've also been on the receiving end of having to do that same exact thing.
Oh, that's always rough.
The reason that you had to like call someone back in, and I don't know if you're like not allowed to talk about it or what, but I'm curious.
No, you're good. It was actually due to working with a company. I was the head of their programmer staff. Essentially, I was just put in that position. And they wanted to hire on a bunch of college students. And I'm sorry, college programmers, no, don't do it. They were still fresh in school. And there's this one kid that I saw a lot of promise in. But he just wasn't there yet, and I felt so freaking awful giving him that rejection note. I let him know, like, hey, come back in, I gotta talk to you some more, give you some tidbits, maybe like help you out on your next interview so that you don't just bomb it, and then continue on.
Oof. Oh, that's good. I mean, it's life, but it's rough.
Fun.
not fun. I would hate to be in that position. I got asked.
Yeah, it was.
That's bad.
Yeah, it was not a fun position. The company itself wasn't that great either. I felt positive in saying no to him. Let's just say that.
Yeah, honestly, in some ways, maybe he found something better. So.
I'm sure of it. And that's pretty good. And it's cool that you mentioned the systems, because that actually plays into question 2, which asks, what systems do you use to create game concepts and story characters? They said the reason they asked this question is because it demonstrates the candidate's artistic and creative skills. That's a very broad stroke, but I'll give it to them. What systems do you use to create game concepts and story characters? Now, I wasn't sure if they were talking like physical systems, like applications or whatnot, Jira, Slack, Blender, stuff like that, or something more abstract, like something that you would come up with on pen and paper for how you do your own design work. I guess it can be taken either way, but what do you guys think?
I've actually got an answer for that. Oops, sorry.
I
guess I'll go first. So, at least like from what I've seen, again, when you're talking to these types of people that are like looking to you for like, are you going to fit with our team, or can you help us to be profitable? That's why they want you on their team. So it kind of helps sometimes just to compare what you do to what someone else does, but better. So for instance, like, taking a concept that is already proven to work and being like, well, if I had this concept, I would, do so much more with it. At least in my own experience with working on Mogrimera, I just took the idea of like wizard school. Wizard schools are very popular in media, but there's still like so much more that can be done with it. Like, a bunch of shows have barely even scratched the surface of different things you can do with a wizard school setting. So, it's both your idea and kind of like working off of someone else's idea, if that makes sense.
Makes sense to me. This when it comes to design like that, we said before that kind of stuff is always iterative. You can always build off of what someone else has done, and you can always make improvements here and there to create something wholly unique and new. That's the wonderful thing about this medium.
Yes.
What about you guys? What do you guys think?
I'd almost flip-flop. From the first one, I do like this question in general, because it leads into another icebreaker-ish question while still doing the ulterior motive of getting something out of that you need. But at the same time, I also feel like it's very one-sided. This would be more so for like a art designer or almost like a graphic designer. Definitely not someone who you would be checking for like programming or something very technical. Although on the flip side of that, those technical artists also need to work off of concepts, which then lead into additional things. They all kind of have their same inner workings of how do you do something, how do you build upon it, how do you do it, but all of them tend to lead to different things. And I feel like this question in general is a little bit more misleading.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I guess like you said at the beginning, I wasn't really sure if this meant literal systems like software, or if it meant just like, mental systems or like processes, that you go through.
Right.
But I guess like yeah, I guess it does specifically say it demonstrates the artistic and creative skills. Yeah, I think this would be important, because you got to see that someone you were like hiring can work with a system that you have as a company, so you can communicate. Because it's like if everyone's kind of just doing their own thing, it's not going to work. Because that's the point of a team, is you're all kind of on the same path, on the same page about everything. So I think this is a very good question, because it's important to know that they can, even if their system is a little different from yours, if they can kind of work on your system as a team, and so you can all be on the same page and be more efficient.
Yeah, that's pretty good. And the teamwork and efficiency plays into question 3. But before that, I do want to ask you guys, okay, so say we're the ones doing the interview and we're sitting across from this candidate. Now, what type of candidate would likely be... how should I phrase it? Yeah, what type of candidate do you think would likely come through here? Because after looking through these questions, what this is kind of telling me in the story I'm getting is that the person that's being interviewed is most likely a generalist, someone who has a few years in modeling, some time spent coding, maybe some time spent working with other company systems, someone who's like a jack of all trades. Now, honestly, I don't know, and Charles, you probably have more insight on this than me, but are professional companies really looking for jack of all trades when it comes to game development? Don't they want someone who's hyper specialized in an area? Isn't that the most efficient to have on a team, right?
Usually, yes. I'd say you're definitely right about 6 years ago. The systems seem to have changed a bit. Jack of all trades is really more so favored for indie developers, because you usually have a much smaller team and you need to cross blend into different areas. But for something like, let's say, Raven Software or another bigger company out there, they're not only looking for hyper specialized people who are like strictly just 3D modeling, but they're also looking for hyper specialized people in what they're doing. So if you're trying to apply for like Raven Software, not only do you have to be a great modeler, but you also have to be a great modeler with like World War stuff, more of the military type stuff, and really getting down that setting right.
Yeah.
And I think I guess I'll add something to this too. I don't have a lot of experience working with a lot of different companies, but from what I've heard, it does seem like, at least, when you go to a company wanting to be an artist for that company, you kind of can't get away from not having anything to do with the more technical side, because the things you make are always going to need to be put in by the more technical artists and programmers. And there's always issues with, like, you can create something and it's just not efficient enough, or it doesn't work within the systems, and then why did they bother hiring you as the artist, kind of deal.
Yeah, I just from my experience with, and this isn't like really a professional setting, but it's more of like a personal belief in how I operated when I was teaching game development. I always told everyone that no matter what they think they want to specialize in, or know they want to specialize in game development, like if they want to be a programmer, artist, musician, whatever, I always told them like to still like pay attention in those classes that they were forced to take, because like, kind of like in any major, you do have to take some classes that do seem a little relevant. So like in the course, in the program I was teaching, they had to take a little bit of everything. They had to do a little bit of like art classes. They had to do some programming classes, no matter what they wanted to specialize in, right? And I always told them that was important, because even if you were going to go and get a job and you were just going to be a programmer 100% of the time, you're also working on a team, and you need to be able to communicate with the artists. You need to communicate with the musicians. You need to communicate with every aspect of it. So it's like, even if you never touch the art side of things and you're done programming, you still need to be able to communicate effectively with your artist, and you need to understand the file, even just stuff like the file types they're going to be giving you, and like how you're supposed to implement that. And so I think maybe not jack of all trades in the sense of like you have to be able to do everything, but it's more, at the very least, you should understand each aspect of game development, because you have to communicate with the team, work with them.
Definitely, and 100% agreed with that. One of the bigger things that I noticed, especially taking like that lead programmer position, you had to talk to the artists, and you had to be able to let them understand your point of view, and you had to make them understand what you're doing and what they should be doing to make the magic happen. And being able to do that across all teams is so awesome and needed.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's pretty important to be familiar with all those aspects, especially like you said, Charles, in a larger team setting, because there's going to be a lot of moving parts, and everyone needs to move in lockstep if you want the project to go well and succeed.
I am very curious though, like if you were to join like a really big company, if like they would literally just have you like modeling trees. It's like that's your whole job, is you model trees. I feel like those jobs must still exist somewhere, but yeah. They might be less common.
It kind of seems like it, like when you look at credits of like a really big game. I mean, it'll be like environmental modeler, or like it gets very specific the bigger the company is, you know.
It's true.
Definitely. There's also chop houses as well in a lot of studios. Final Fantasy VII Remake was the biggest like newsworthy one, where the chop house screwed up so badly that the studio actually had to redo over half the game. But chop houses, their whole job is just environment, and that's it.
Yeah, and I guess online stores have become more prevalent too. So if you don't have someone that just makes all your trees, if it's a small enough game, or if you can find the assets that you need, you can just get an asset pack of a bunch of trees, and then you're done.
Yep.
pretty notable games actually do that.
Yeah.
Escape from Tarkov is one that comes to mind. I think PUBG does that as well.
Mhm.
And there's a big one. I can't remember the name. It's on the tip of my tongue. But there's a really big AAA game that someone said we're using assets from like the marketplace or whatever. It'll come to me later. Personally, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't matter to me. I think it's actually great when they do that, because then the person that made the asset pack can get paid. Then the studio can have whatever assets. I think it's a win-win for everybody. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Definitely.
that's pretty good. It's gonna bother me. It is, man. Do you guys know of any studios that do that? That I could have sworn it was like a big news story from Kotaku or Verge or somebody like that. There was some.
I do
AAA
know of one recently, but it's not related to necessarily that. It was actually a cross-pollination between games and dealing with horses. I forget what was the game that needed it, but there was a realistic horse that was needed for like animations and stuff like that. And what ended up happening is that the people behind Red Dead Redemption 2 mocapped a horse, and they took that mocap information and put it into their game. And then that game went on to do another game with mocap horses. And essentially, all mocap horses can be traced back to that one mocapping, which is pretty sweet.
in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Correct. Yep.
Oh, that's really impressive. How do you mocap a horse? They put it like the suit on it and stuff.
Yes, they did it very carefully. Actually, they mocap a lot of animals.
That's really. I did not know that.
I didn't know that either. See, that seems almost
I
impossible.
mean, it kind of
to
makes
do.
sense though.
Yes, dogs are the best. Cats are the worst. Dogs happen to be deers and other things in video games, which is pretty sweet.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, probably most quadruped movement, you can just kind of make it a dog.
You said you played a lot of Stray, right? And I'm sure you're pretty familiar with like their animation system and whatnot. How did they get theirs to look so good? I should say, is that like a dog too that they just tailored down?
Surprisingly, no. And that's even a more surprising thing. There was no mocapping in Stray. It was all hand
get out of
animation.
Here. No way.
Oh wow.
Yes,
No
they
way.
had studio cats, which was pretty sweet.
I was gonna say they had to have at least had some models walking around just to.
Something, because it looks pretty 1-to-1 to me.
It really does. Yeah, that was the insane part that blew my mind. It was all hand done, animated, and they did it off of a couple of cats in their studio.
That's really cool.
Wow. Okay. That's gonna be my motivation of the week. They were able to mocap the cats and Stray by hand. I can do anything. All right. Oh well. I guess this is on number 3. So they asked, "How do you organize and plan your project work?" Pretty straightforward. They say it shows how the candidate structures their time and resources. I don't see a problem with this question. I think it's actually a pretty important question you might want to ask somebody, not just for game development, but for any project-oriented thing. This seems very, very integral to ask. So for me, I think most people are probably going to lean on external systems like, oh yeah, I use Slack, or I use Teams to do X, Y, and Z, and then maybe export it into, whatever. That's probably how I could see this question going down 90% of the time. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think they're definitely looking for what type of time management system you use, so they can ensure that you will be allocated decently in their company and whatever they use. Another way how I see this as well is how clean are you and how decent will you be with your project? Will you name stuff appropriately? Will you have issues naming things appropriately? In larger companies, they have all the way down to like a Word document that you have to name this specific way for this specific asset, and it cannot be changed. It has to be 100% this way. And there's good reasons behind it, but I think that's what they're trying to field with this question is how clean and what do you use exactly?
That's pretty standard to me.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to add to that other than just like, I think it's generally a good idea, even if you're not going to be a game designer or, anything like that. It's a good practice to find ways to keep your computer space tidy. Computers are kind of that weird nebulous space where you can have a lot of junk in one place, getting in your way constantly, but it's not very noticeable. It's not like you're tripping over it during the night like you would in your real house. But there can be a ton of clutter and stuff, or it's very easy to lose files that are very important, and then it's there's no getting those back once they're gone. Take care of your stuff, back up your stuff, make sure it's all named properly.
That's a really good point. I never thought about that before. How it's it's less, like you said, it's kind of use the word nebulous. It's when you have a mess in your house, you notice it because you stub your toe. Yes, that's a really good point, and I do think it's a good question because organization is very important, and it gets exponentially more important when you're working with a team, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Actually, a good point. Hey, speaking of keeping things backed up, what do you guys use for source control? Because personally, I use Perforce, and I love it a lot. But what do you guys use?
Mogdu Team actually uses a really weird amalgamation for cheap, which is really, really nice. We managed to run, I think it's now up to 5 terabytes of space for maybe $100 a month, which is super duper nice considering it's 5 terabytes of space. But we use Dropbox Business for the storage, and then we use Git for the source control.
Oh, okay, that's pretty good. What about you, Matt? Do you use any source control?
Yeah, I use Plastic SCM on Unity because they kind of automatically integrated me over from. I just used to use the collab because it was easy and just integrated right into the Unity editor, but then they dissolved the collab basically, and they transitioned over to Plastic SCM, and it seems to work great for me. I also I'm very paranoid about losing stuff, and I'm very cautious. So I actually do some Google Drive backups every once in a while too. I will literally zip up my entire project folder and put it on my Google Drive. That's how cautious I am. Yeah, that's how cautious I am. So I have the version control with Plastic SCM. So I have a easy to use backup system that also doubles as version control. But then it's I want to double check, and what if Plastic SCM shut down or something happened to their servers drastic and that they lost everything, you know what I mean? So I just I back up my project every once in a while and just upload to Google Drive. Very primitive caveman backup basically.
Oh, that's nothing wrong with that at all. I'm probably even more primitive in that regard because I just use OneDrive. It comes with my computer. Okay,
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's time to back up. Here you go, and then make it a cloud file. So I'm with you 100% away. Because I have lost a version of TFA before, and I was hurt. And if it hadn't been for OneDrive, I would not have been able to recover it. So I'm paranoid just like you. I hate losing stuff.
I didn't know you lost something. That really sucks.
Oh man, I was almost in tears.
Yeah, no,
I was hurt.
Yeah, sorry that happened. That sucks.
I was hurt, but thankfully I've learned a lesson, and never again. Everything stays triple backed up just in case. But yeah,
Definitely.
pretty good. Yeah, pretty standard question. I guess number 4 is, what are the most challenging issues of video game design? And they said the reason this question is asked because it highlights potential problem areas. Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with this question. I think it's another really good question to ask, and not even for if I were going to ask this question, in my opinion, I feel like this would be the really good icebreaker question, because not only can you get the person comfortable, but being able to see what they consider the most challenging aspects of video game design is really important, because I don't think this is a right or wrong question. I think this is a what's your perspective on the medium type of question. And when you get different perspectives, you come up with a more clearer picture, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think everyone has things they struggle with, and like you said, it's not really a right or wrong necessarily. It's just that it'd be good to know what a potential teammate or employee or whatever would need to improve on or check, make sure maybe this person has a weakness, but we do have people that can help them, like mentor them and help them with that weakness. So I just think it's that's a good question. It's just a general, like, what do you struggle with or what weaknesses do you have that we can try to accommodate?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I pretty much agree. I don't really have too much to add to it, honestly. I think you guys hit it on the head with this one.
Should we say like a weakness that we think we've like struggled with as like examples, or?
Yeah, I was gonna go there. Yeah, I was gonna go there next. If you want to start, what do you think?
The hardest thing for me has always been, like you guys were just discussing the source files and those different things. Just because I'm not a programmer, I'm an artist, and I haven't really messed with the in-depth workings of like computers and stuff. I only generally know how they work. When Charles was trying to show me how our like GitHub, our place where I'm able to get our source files and stuff, how that works, and how to use. We also tried things like Unity Colab and all these other different things. And every time I would just not really understand why the computer would like not do what I wanted it to. But then, it was always a simple thing. It was always like I didn't hit a button or turn on a setting or read through the thing correctly. So it's usually like, I think human error is a big problem on my end, just when it comes to machines, because I never really know what I should be checking and double checking, and if something is working properly or not. I usually just assume like, okay, it turned on, I guess it works. It's like, no, actually there's a ton of errors. Maybe it doesn't work. So yeah.
Pretty good.
It's the line of red text. Oh my gosh. I'd have to definitely agree with Kristen there. For me, it's the tools. There's so many different tools in game development. And me being the guy who has to make sure that everything plugs into each other well, does this, does that. Somebody will come up to me and be like, hey, should we be using WAV or MP3s? And I'll be like, I actually don't know the answer to that one. What's the dealio with the optimization with that? It's always figuring out the minute details of every single tool that you're using and how it works and what it's doing in the background is definitely going to be one of the more difficult parts. But on the flip side, it's also one of the most intriguing parts, especially figuring out the secret to how something works.
Yeah, if you want me to go, I guess. I think I already said earlier, my biggest issue is marketing, but I don't know if you consider that a part of game design necessarily. But if it was more specific to like the actual process of making the game, I think my problem is like just getting in my head about things. And like one thing I really struggle with video game fables was like connecting dots, or like even just making a writing decision of what was going to happen. I would just be in distress for weeks trying to decide how I wanted something to go, or what would make the most sense in the context. And I think just like probably that process of like making decisions and writing, I think was one of the hardest parts for me, for sure.
Maybe even, because I realize that's another thing that I've struggled with, is just making decisions when you have to make them. Like, there's some decisions that you can take your time on, and then there's ones where it's like, we need to decide on this right now, today. And it's like, this is a big thing, though. Like, this could really mess up a part of our game if we choose the wrong thing,
Yeah.
That could be stressful.
I think the biggest one for me specifically was the ending of the game, because that's what people remember.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
Yeah, that's true.
And at that point, when I was at the point where I had to decide, because I'd been putting it off, like I had maybe like 5 different ways I wanted it to end, right? And all of those things did work with what happened before it in the story. It wasn't just like random ideas. And then I was like at the point where I was running out of ways to stall. Like I realized at that point I had been stalling for years planning this, and I got to that point where I was like I was very far along in the process. I was literally running out of work to do before the ending, and I was like, oh my god, I gotta make some decisions of how this story will end, And I think that was the most specific, hardest part for me, for sure. It just drove me crazy. And there comes a point where if you're an indecisive person like me, like I'm very indecisive. I struggle with that a lot in every aspect of my life. Sometimes you just gotta kind of pick one and just go with it, and just
go with it.
even if it's literally like not even joking, even if you literally have to write them down and pull them out of a hat. If that's what it comes down to, if you have issues with that like me, then you got to do what you got to do at that point, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. For me, your guys's were much more cool than mine. For me, because video game design, it's actually character design. I'm not an artist by any stretch of the means, and coming up with good character design is really, really difficult. Like, I can't draw or anything, so when I was explaining what the main characters of my game were gonna look like, that was rough. That took a long time. I think I spent weeks on the design. It's very simple. It's just so, you know, 2 white foxes and they've got like 2 accessories a piece. So it took a super long time to do. And I've been trying to kind of like study character design more and kind of diversify my ideas and influences. And I've gotten better, but I'm still looking over some characters and it's literally just, so that guy's just wearing a blazer or he just has a briefcase. And you know, it's I don't know, it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough. So that's kind of the one that I struggle with, and that's an ongoing thing because characters are still being designed and new ones need to be introduced. So I'm still working on it. Yeah, so that's me.
Yeah, at least from my experience, like I love the character design aspect, but then there have been many times where I'm like, this character is so obnoxious to animate. Who did this? I was like, oh, I did this. I did this to myself. I gave them all this overlapping action. Why did I do this?
It's funny you mentioned that because that's a common thing that I'll struggle with sometimes. Like, sometimes you'll have to deal with something that, like, I'll have to deal with something that past Matt put off. Or and present Matt forgot about, and I'm like, damn it, who did this? And I have no one to blame. I'm looking around like, who can I blame for this?
Yeah.
Now I got to deal with this thing that I had just put off for so long or whatever.
Yes, I'm the exact same way.
I'll just blame my dog. Why did you code this, Phoenix?
Well,
that's pretty good. Really awesome. I guess it moves on to the last question in this 5-question set. It says, how do you stay up to date with the latest game and software trends? It says, indicates the candidate's willingness to maintain modern standards. All right, now this is going back to question 1 territory where I kind of don't like this question. And the question itself isn't too bad. I don't like their reasoning behind it. Indicates the candidate's willingness to maintain modern standards. Now, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite because I've been saying since the beginning that, hey, you know, the industry is always shifting and changing and we need to stay up to date. But at the same time, again, I'm thinking a little bit cynically, what is their definition of modern standards? Because that can either mean, all right, this is what the industry is doing, like, for example, adopting upscaling tech like DLSS or FSR, or this can be arbitrary standards the company came up with, like, we're going to use X software because it's cheaper, even though Y software is more efficient and has a larger feature set. Things like that, you know, so so I kind of don't like this question. Like, it's not bad. How do you stay up to date with the latest games and software trends? That's not a bad question at all. But I think, again, it becomes a very slippery slope and it's kind of loaded because what do you mean? And a lot of times I've noticed that in some interviews, at least in my experience, that the interviewer isn't always willing to kind of provide that kind of clarity, because if you do provide that kind of clarity, you start bleeding into what their actual intentions are. So that's just my take. I don't know what you guys think though.
Definitely, I'm with you on this one. I also don't like it because of that modern statement there. What exactly does modern mean? Especially right now, in October 2022, there's been a lot of talk about AI art. DALL-E 2 came out. Everybody was playing around with it. It was awesome. It was amazing. They were making art. And then somebody found another program that's kind of like DALL-E 2, but I can't remember the name of it. But essentially, it lets you create art a little bit more specifically, And there's been this YouTuber all over my feed describing how do you use this tool for game art. And I'm kind of sitting here like, man, that's pretty darn cool. AI is actually creating like chest textures and a bunch of other things and doing it actually really well. And then on the other hand, it's like, okay, is this going to be where the market is moving, or is it just going to be a fad? And at that point, maintaining modern standards, does that mean we need to learn this new AI created technology, or should we kind of continue on with the path that we're doing and still learning the tools that we have currently to their fullest potential?
I have something to add on to that, because you know what the AI thing really reminds me of? It reminds me of when Minecraft became popular and all of a sudden everyone was trying to do random generation, or like, having generation for things, so that's like, endless possibilities. You can play the game thousands of times. It's like, that's great and all, but you can't, like, it seems like sometimes like studios will be working on a game and then a trend pops up, so they try to like make whatever game they're working on fit that. We see that a lot with a lot of bigger games that are just trying to change themselves to be like the one that's ahead of them, kind of. So I don't know, I feel like it's never a good idea to entirely rely on a trend. It is maybe better though. Like, this question makes me think of just like, do research, like keep in mind what's out there, what's popular right now, or what's not popular right now, but what still has a lot of potential, and just keep it in mind as you're working on your own project in case you fall into a similar category.
Yeah, it is kind of a loaded question, because like you said, this is another one thing that probably depends on the person asking it and what they actually mean by it. Because like just using something because it's new doesn't necessarily mean it's better, but it also is important for efficiency's sake. Like, there is a point where it is efficient to learn a new thing, even if it's hard at first, if it's gonna be better in the long run. It's like, it's the same idea of like making tools for development, which I'm a big fan of and advocate for. Like, I made a lot of editor tools for video game fables, and I would spend and even though I'd spend a lot of initial time and investing that time in the beginning of it, it paid off long term, because I saved 10 times the amount of time it would have taken me if I didn't make that tool to begin with. So like, I am a advocate for keeping up with technology, but also doing it in a way where it's not just jumping on something because it's new. So I'm kind of I think it's better just to approach it logically and actually examine it, not just have an absolute answer for all of things. Like, it's not just like, oh, just use anything because it's new, or just don't use anything new because it's scary and I'm afraid to change. Like, it's you have to have a medium, and you have to actually look at each case by case.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point about like not going with something because it's new. We're kind of still feeling the effects of the chip shortage around COVID, around like 2019, 2020. But during that time, when a lot of global foundries that produce computer chips shut down, a lot of car manufacturers suffered big time because the process node they use for some of their cars is ancient. Now, I don't want to get like too technical and everything, but as time moves forward and every generation a new wafer is produced, chips essentially get smaller and smaller and smaller and more efficient and more powerful. So, for example, we'll just say arbitrary number like 20 nanometers. That's a pretty large size, an old process node as far as computer tech is concerned. Right now, I think the most cutting edge node is like 3 and 5 nanometer. Our manufacturers themselves, I think we're still like on 90, 110, 120 in the year 2020, spending all this money to keep this old process around when you can get something for cheaper and more efficient. But like Matt said, you have to spend the time, and the time itself is another investment that you have to, wager if it's worth it or not. And that's kind of the interesting thing, we see this not just in game development, but other industries as well. New techniques, new processes come out, and if you're so used to how you've been doing things and you're used to how your numbers are on a spreadsheet, you're probably not going to be as inclined to take that risk on something new but I think in some cases it's good. Now, as far as this AI art stuff is concerned, I'm still straddling the fence. I think the potential is there, and it could be a very, very powerful tool. But at the same time, I'm kind of like seeing another procedurally generated type of fad pop up where everything had procedural generation. I don't know if you guys have heard of that game called what was it, Hellgate London, that EA published in like 20.
Yeah, I think I did hear about that.
Yeah, so another game that had procedural generation just to have procedural generation, and it's probably one of the worst offenders of it. Because like a lot of games at the time were just like, okay, we made like 5 sets of this one level with different layouts, and we'll just like essentially cycle this through. And I think that is an awful way to use procedural generation. I feel like we should be pushing that kind of technology into interactivity, making AI and enemies and NPCs act more believable, have new behaviors, making environments themselves actually take advantage of having a, I don't want to say random layout, but essentially that. Like, I guess a really basic example would be you have a game that takes place in a forest, and one thing you could do with procedural generation is over time have the forest change as you're playing in this world. Just like in real life, forests and environments change over the course of time. Obviously much slower than in a video game, but that's the kind of things that I would be trying to do to push the technology, not just the status quo.
Yeah.
Definitely. And sorry to bring up the AI generation. I know it's kind of a hot topic, but that was the first thing that came to my mind when talking about like modern-y stuff. And specifically with that one, I think it's interesting because I feel like we could utilize it a lot for art concepts. Not so much for in-game designs, I feel, because it's just a little bit, it's not quite there yet for sure.
Yeah, it's brilliant as a like starting point, because honestly, when someone's painting a picture or making concept art, maybe not half of your time, but like a good chunk of your initial time is just slap some colors down and try to get them to harmonize. So if the computer can already do that for you and generally get some shapes for like a city or something, that's like, okay, cool, I can just work off this.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Matt. You're good.
Oh no, I was just saying I agree. It's a very good point.
And I like my friend uses Midjourney, I think it's called. That one that generates like the environment concepts and stuff. That one's really cool. You have to pay for it, but I think it is pretty cool and neat how it works and the things you can come up with it. Personally, I don't think I'd be paying for any AI whatever right now. I still think it's a little too immature, to go commercial just yet. But I'm kind of with Charles. I think it's going to be sooner than we think, because if you guys, I don't know if you guys like keep up with like computer hardware and stuff. It's one of my favorite fields. You'll notice that over the last couple GPU and CPU generations, we've been getting a large push towards AI accelerators. Google's working on tensor cores in the new phones. NVIDIA, AMD, now Intel. They have these artificial intelligence like accelerators built into their technology, and right now a lot of it's being used by data science and life sciences. But I do think eventually, once game engines themselves catch up, because that's usually how it works. Once these larger engines themselves start adopting some of this newer technology, you'll start seeing a bigger push in mainstream for it. We'll probably get more AI stuff sooner than we think. I give it like another console generation. So we're looking at maybe like 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
That's just my prediction. Looking into my crystal ball, so maybe you don't mind. Any other thoughts about that though? I mean, it's really good stuff. I love it.
Yeah, I definitely think you're on that right track, and I feel like it's definitely going to be a part of gaming in the future for sure. I just looked it up. The program, for those of you who are super curious on it, is called Stable Diffusion. I do believe it is free. and there's a lot of tutorials out there for it, so have at it if you want. But yeah, it's very interesting and intriguing, especially how quickly you can slap on many different ideas and see the conclusion almost immediately.
I mean, I mostly use it for memes, but I would love to use it for something productive. You know what I mean? Like I was putting like, I don't know, what did I do that? I was like Voldemort in drag or something like that. Like just like doing like wild stuff, or just like making memes of like, I don't know, just wild stuff, like different real life people in Smash Brothers, and just see what pops up on the AI.
Yeah, someone made who was it? Was there someone here that did like the Columbo amiibo?
Yeah. I saw that. I don't remember who did that though.
That was so funny. That was so funny to me. I love that show.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, but yeah, that's pretty good. A very excellent question, and I'm kind of excited about the future where the industry goes as far as technology is concerned. But you guys know I'm a huge hardware buff. I love computer hardware, and it's just one of my favorite things to keep up with. And I just love that marriage of hardware and software, because when you have the synergy down, you can do some amazing stuff. You really can. But probably say that for the last part. I do want to talk about that some more. Though, to move on while we're still on the segue, our next major focus question is about the mobile market, which is very interesting. So when I was doing my research, it said that the mobile market is growing exponentially year over year. The global games application market was valued at 108.76 billion USD in 2021, and it's projected to reach 335.14 billion by 2030, and it says growing at a CAGR rate, which means compound, I think it's compound aggregate growth. I forgot. Compound aggregate growth something at 13.32% during the forecast period, which is these next 8 years. So from 2022 to 2030, they expect the market to have grown to the 335.14 billion. So the question in all this is that, should we as indies be focusing our attention towards the mobile market, or is the platform still too volatile to see any sort of traditional success? So to just immediately fire right off what I think about this question, I think this is another catch-22. So again, this is kind of playing into the hardware and stuff, but if you've been noticing, where you're starting to see more and more dedicated Android, like iOS type base devices. To give you an example, Razer and Logitech just recently announced and are releasing gaming handhelds that actually natively run Android and the App Store itself. And then other companies are doing the same thing. There's this real huge push to have just some kind of streamlined hardware in the mobile sector that's not just a phone. And I find that really interesting that companies are paying attention to this, because if you remember back when smartphones themselves were getting popular, a lot of major publishers did put games on mobile. Like Capcom put like Devil May Cry 3 on mobile or something. There was Devil May Cry game on mobile. Obviously like the Sonic games that are on mobile as well. There's some other stuff too that I remember, but it's all fuzzy. Point being, at the time they didn't really see any success because people just were not paying actual money to play games on their phone. It was all the freemium stuff, it's free to start, but then you pay for orbs, gems, coins, or whatever.
Yeah.
And that still seems to be the way most revenue is generated. That's probably why it's so inflated. But I'm curious that if companies are starting to pay attention some more again, does that make a way for us smaller guys? I don't know what you guys think.
I think I'm going to kind of echo you on that a little bit. Definitely agreeing. If it's just strictly the mobile market, like your mobile phone market, the Google Play Store, Apple Store is a little bit better, but Google Play Store, in specific, the mobile market, while it is very, very, very lucrative, you need to have the right morality to do it, and B, the right mindset to do it, and C, marketing knowledge. Without those three keys, you're not really going to get far. A lot of those App Store games see a lot of success due to things called whales, people who overspend into things, people who continuously spend, and you're continuously egging them to spend. You can get by without doing that, but that's where the majority of a lot of these apps are getting their economy from. And then on top of that, you also have the SKU. And I don't know if Matt has really noticed this, but in Steam as well, and any platform really, you're going to have a very large SKU. So the bottom is going to be like almost nothing. To the left of the graph, and then on the right of the graph, you have the smaller percents, and it goes skyrocketing up. So I feel like while the industry is going to see this huge jump in money, what's going to happen is that about 25% to the SKU of the right of the graph is just going to get bigger, and the smaller indies who are drowning in like the 2 million games published to the platform every day is just going to get smaller and smaller.
I was gonna kind of say something similar. Right now, it feels like the phone market is unfortunately kind of like a public beach that just got flooded with trash too quickly before anyone could really use it. So it's hard to, because again, it's like it's not that it's bad to make a phone game. It's just there's so many bad phone games out there that like how are you gonna stand out and prove that you're not one of them?
Yeah.
I agree. I definitely agree. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I think I don't think phones or I think an important thing I guess is to distinguish between phones and mobile, because you brought up a really good point, is that mobile gaming isn't just phones anymore. You know, you have, I think the Switch kind of broke the industry where there's a lot of just straight up Switch clones that even come from like bigger companies, you know, so mobile would include those, and I'd argue mobile market would even include a Switch because it is a tablet. That's all it is, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in terms of indies, it's I don't know, like I don't know any indies who make mobile games, so I don't really know, like I haven't heard even anecdotes from people, so I don't really know much to say about it. But I do think that traditional games just probably don't do well on mobile, and I don't know if someone could prove me wrong or if their statistics back that up, but to me it just doesn't seem like, I don't know anyone that plays like a console style game on mobile. I don't know anyone that does that.
Yeah.
And I know that's I know that's anecdotal, but I don't think that's a thing. And like you said, the mobile game market is a completely different market. If you're talking about phones more specifically, it's a completely different type of game. It's almost just it's a completely different universe essentially. And I mean, I used to play a phone game religiously. It just shut down this week. I played Final Fantasy Record Keeper, and I've been playing that every day for years and years, you know. R.I.P. Record Keeper. I cry every day.
I love that game so much.
You said what?
I really love that game a lot.
Oh, you did?
I love that one, and Kingdom Hearts Cross or Chi, whatever you want to call it.
We gotta talk about Record Keeper then. But yeah, so it's just, I understand as a gamer, I do have a little bit of insight because I did play a mobile game, a very phone-ish game. I played a gacha game for years, so like I have seen it from the gamer side of it. And I don't know, I think you have to have, I don't know, to make money you pretty much have to make a gacha game. You have to make some kind of, it's just a completely different type of gaming universe. It's not the same at all.
It feels... Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, it does kind of feel like the same way you make money off of a phone game is like the same way you'd make money off of a slot game. Just thinking about what Charles mentioned before, the whales, where it's like you kind of benefit from people being very easy to sway with, like, you know, ooh, shiny new thing, you want this, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I know people, not personally, but like from participating on like the Record Keeper Reddits and Discord and stuff, it's like there are people on there who, you know, I'm assuming they're just people maybe in IT who have like really good jobs and they're making, you know, at least six figures, and they just got money to burn, and they're big nerds. They're gamer nerds. Like, what else are they gonna do? You know, I guess buying a $60 game doesn't satisfy that it's just spending all the money, the extra money they have. So I know people who would just invest thousands of dollars in a game. You know,
Yeah.
it's a different universe, and whales are the key to that.
Yeah.
Also, you're sorry, really quick, you're really 100% right, Matt. The way of how you design a mobile game versus like a mobile console game, I'll call it, like a Switch or a Steam Deck versus an actual console game, it's really different. Nintendo goes over quite a bit of their philosophies, but really you're looking for break times, smaller break times, and limited break times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys are bringing up like the Switch and Steam Deck, because again, when you talk about mobile, which I noticed here too, they were specifically talking about like phones, but they didn't specify it. Because for me, I consider all of those devices mobile, even the deck that I have here on my desk. It's a mobile device, but each one has its own philosophy and how it does things. Specifically for Steam and everything. The whole philosophy behind the deck is just to get PC games playable at acceptable fidelity and frame rates. So Matt, will use your game as an example. I played a lot on Steam Deck and works excellently out of the box, and it's pretty much the same experience you would have on your desktop PC, but just on the go and scaled down. No loss of performance, no loss of fidelity. That's what Steam is going for. Nintendo, on the other hand, similar concept, but it's to have just a lightweight device that you can bring all of your custom tailored Switch games for, because games on the Switch are built for that platform. And we get over to the Wild West of phones and everything, and like Charles said, the way you design a mobile game is completely different in philosophy and design of how you would the game on Switch or PC, and by extension the deck. And that's very important to note. Because when you talk about mobile, especially since these consoles have been out for a little bit now, the term is kind of thrown and conflated around. But you need to make the distinction, because mobile phone is not the same thing as mobile Switch.
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
Conversely, though, I do think both markets are growing. I've been keeping very, very close eye on market trends as far as like mobile consoles themselves go, not so much like iOS and Android, but as far as like the deck and how the Switch are doing. And year over year, month over month, they are growing in size. It's actually pretty exciting to see. And very, very soon, we're going to see a lot of these devices kind of, I don't want to say flood the market, but they're going to become more accessible. I mean, I mentioned earlier, Razer, Logitech, they're bringing their own, so I guess you can call them Switch clones or handheld devices to the market. And it's just weird to see that since 2017 to now, how this market has grown. And it does directly impact us. Like, I don't want people to think I'm going off on a tangent about handhelds here. When this market grows, so do game sales, and revenue as well. Because one thing I noticed with the deck since it's been released, the market share for its operating system has grown significantly. And the types of games that are played on a handheld have also reflected that in Steam's charts as well. Because before, stuff like JRPGs and farming sims, they were trending pretty high, but they weren't like overtaking your popular shooters and whatnot. But now they are. Since the Steam Deck's been released, like, it's kind of crazy to see like what the last top 10 games were for that last month. I think Vampire Survivors was there. Stardew Valley was back in the top 10. The new game from Disney, the Disney Daylight, Dreamlight, whatever.
Dreamlight Valley,
that was the Dreamlight Valley. That was in the top 10 for games played on deck. So it is very, very important to keep an eye on what happens in the hardware scene, because it does impact us specifically.
Yeah, I'd be interested in talking to a mobile indie developer, because like I said, I don't know anyone like that, and it'd be really cool to just see what they have to say.
I should, that's a good point. I should have invited one on. I actually do know one who made like little, I don't want to call them RPG Maker games, but that's kind of what it looks like and reminds me of. They're just like little RPG Maker, SNES style RPGs on a phone. And I should talk to him how that stuff did, like as far as sales.
That could be a future podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good one.
definitely.
But yeah, you guys have any other thoughts about that?
I definitely 100% agree. The more people that you have buying something is the more hands that you have to give them content. That's essentially how the consoles and the big companies do it. They sell you the item and then they sell you the add-on. And the add-on in this case is games that we make. So the more units there are available, the more chances you have at selling your game, which is super duper nice.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. Well, if there's nothing else, I guess we'll move on to the next question. Now, Matt, you weren't here the last time we did this recording session, so this question is essentially a repeat from last time, but it's still very, very important, and so just give it like that thoughtful grace, of course. Question says, limitation breeds creativity, though what limitations exactly? The ones we impose on ourselves or by external factors? Old retro games had to work within the constraints of hardware and the software of their time. Those limitations made way for amazing experiences. Is this really a thing anymore?
Yeah, this is actually a really interesting topic to me. Like, I've talked about this with people. I love this topic, actually. Because it's very interesting to see that, like, a lot of things, especially in the early days, like when everything was just the Wild West, it's interesting to see like what we might assume as modern gamers was a design choice, when in reality it was a compromise or a workaround for like a limitation,
Mm-hmm.
And that's always been very, very interesting to me, especially looking back at like the NES days, like how they did stuff, or even getting to like 16-bit things as well. It's very interesting to see, like. And then what's also interesting about that is to see how those things that came from limitations have stuck around to this day, because they ended up being legitimately good game design choices that they probably wouldn't have thought of if it weren't for limitation. So like there's probably things today, I can't think of off the top of my head, there's probably things today that did stem from limitations that we still use.
I can think of one that is still a very common limitation that is kind of for the better, in my opinion, and that's the idea of just color palette and like style, I guess, more broadly. Basically, like limiting your game to a color palette or a typical like mood for just like a scene or something. A very good limitation, honestly, because it'll keep things a little more focused, a little more clear, as opposed to just like have every color under the sun in one image, and it can start to have like color vibration and other problems that come with having just a lot of colors like beaming into your eyes through a screen.
Definitely, and I think kind of agreeing with Matt there as well. It's led to some very interesting things, and going on the techie side of things, thinking back to like the Sega Genesis, it's interesting because while there were a lot of limitations on what you could and couldn't do, the designers behind the scenes were always constantly hitting that wall and trying to break through it as hard as they can.
Yes.
The Genesis was not supposed to do like 3D games, but Traveler's Tales, awesome guy, I think it was Game Hut or something like that, goes over some of his ways of how his team broke the console literally by allowing it to do 3D graphics, and how they would proportionately copy the screen to save on data, or how they managed to create one of gaming's first ever reflection probes for a title letter on Sonic Racers or Sonic R. Insane stuff like that. But what's interesting is that technology and how they did that also pertains over to what we're still doing today. So they were kind of like the forerunners in how we currently do things, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I agree. And then I guess to keep on like that same type of segue as far as games that did stuff, Silent Hill for me is like one of the biggest examples. Like the fog and how it was a hardware limit because you couldn't render that many things on screen at once. But the way they used it to accentuate the mood was just excellent design, in my opinion, and it plays very, very nicely into the story. And we're still, I mean, we don't use hardware-based fog today, but I mean, we still use some of those same different techniques as far as easing the load on the GPU. You know, Matt, I talked to you the other day about what type of LOD settings or culling you had in video game fables. You know, these kind of limitations don't necessarily leave. Sometimes we develop new ones as the hardware advances. Like you can't render everything at once still. You know, no matter how powerful the PC you have, you always will have hard limits. And the way you work within those limits, I think can really come out with some nice results.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's very interesting. I've always, like I said, I've talked about this with other people before. It's a really cool topic for me because I also think about it from the other side of like, what do we do now? Like I wonder sometimes, like conveniences that we have now, I wonder how much those affect game design. Like, are there things that we have to our advantage, like technologically or in terms of like power, that have actually negatively affected game design? And you know, I could maybe take some time to think about it, but off the top of my head, I can't think of one. But like, I know there's definitely some. You know?
Oh yeah, definitely. If you want an example, I'll give you one. Engine overhead. Back in the day, you had to write everything from scratch. You had to make sure that you had very finite resources. You know what I'm saying? Limited GPU compute, CPU instructions per clock, so you couldn't just go wild with your underlying framework. Excuse me. But now we have Unity, we have Unreal, we have Godot, CryEngine, and they have made development 100 times easier than it was back in the day. But at the same time, they've introduced their own overhead and processing costs as well. So I use my game, for example. I use Unreal Engine 4, and I love the engine. Does everything I need to do. It's great. But I've noticed that when I test on Steam Deck, for example, because I'm using Unreal Engine 4, there is an associated power consumption budget. Yes, so because my game, and it's just the engine itself, because I'm using Unreal Engine 4, I have to work the GPU harder to render what's on screen, and thus I use more power or get less battery life on Steam Deck. As compared to your game, Matt, you use Unity and simpler rendering techniques, but battery life lasts much longer. Which is interesting in and of itself, but that's again one of those concessions we made for convenience. You have to pay with something. Time, efficiency, money, power, something has to give. You can't have it all.
Yeah, I think it's
Definitely.
It's cool to see both sides of that. Like I said, you know.
I think it's cool too.
The dreaded trinity there too.
Yeah. Just really quick, it's kind of not a tangent, but as far as retro stuff goes, when you think about like what was the largest leap in just graphical fidelity, game design principles throughout the consoles? Me personally, I think from like it's either the NES to SNES or the 64 to GameCube. I lean towards the 64 to GameCube, but if you go back and look at RPGs on like the best RPG on NES versus Chrono Trigger on SNES, it's like night and day. You know, I think that kind of leap was just amazing. I didn't get to experience it, but I could imagine back then people were like just, you know, jaws on the floor. What about you guys?
Yeah, I'm old, so I was there for it. Yeah, it's astounding. Like it's unbelievable. I think I agree with you with N64 to GameCube though, or like PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2. I think while I think the transition from 2D to 3D was maybe the most noticeable, just because it was drastic. I do think like going from like N64 to GameCube, for example, was a very, very noticeable change with the same style. Like I think going from, for example, SNES to N64 was very noticeable just because it was a completely different view of a game. Like you were looking in a game world in a completely different way. But at the time, like the technology still wasn't great. Like the 3D just like doesn't look good. And even back then, something people like to live in nostalgia, but like even back then, playing like Final Fantasy VII, I was like, damn, this looks really bad. Like, and it's one of those things where some people, I don't know, maybe my brain just worked different from a lot of people. And like, well, I still love the games. I still looked at it pretty objectively. I was like, at the time, I was like, I don't have to be in the future looking back at this when things are inevitably better to notice this looks bad. Like, am I the only one seeing these Play-Doh people? Like, I can't be the only one that's like saying this looks bad right now, though.
I wondered that too. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's.
I wasn't alive then, obviously, but I'm like, if people really think this looked that good back then?
Yeah, it looked different, and it looked different. But like I said, I think it's just. It's a different way of looking into a game world. I don't think it necessarily looked better. And I've actually said my hot take in the past has been that we tried to do 3D too early. I still stand by that opinion. And a counter I've heard, I think I posted on Twitter or something. A counter someone gave me was that if we hadn't started working, like if game development studios hadn't started working with 3D, the stuff on the next generation wouldn't look good because they wouldn't have had like the practice. And I definitely agree with that, but I really think we tried to do 3D too early. I do not think the technology was ready, in my opinion.
I kind of agree with that too, because there was still so much more we could have done with like pixel art and some other means of creation and seeing stuff on screen, that basically once 3D happened, everyone was like, all right, throw that out, we're just doing 3D.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because that's actually something else I was going to say.
Yeah.
If you look at, actually exactly what I was going to say is that if you look at the 2D games on PlayStation 1, that is like, to me, those are like the peak most beautiful games. I think that is where visuals peaked, because they had so much rendering power and so much processing power for 2D games. You look at a lot of like RPGs, like something like Xenogears or
Threads of Fate.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some others, but like Xenogears popped in my head, so that's kind of what my brain is going. It's just like, I think that should have been the pinnacle of 2D gaming. I don't think we should have done 3D games then. I genuinely don't. I genuinely still stand by that. And if the problem was the market also, everyone was so obsessed with 3D because it was so new and just so mind-blowing, which it was, that 2D games didn't sell as well. And you can correct me if I'm wrong about that, but I think I remember hearing that just 2D games just didn't do very well, because why do we want to play 2D games like we've always been doing when there's this amazing 3D technology? And it's a shame, because I really think that could have been the pinnacle of 2D games, and I think it was, but I think there could have been so many other opportunities. And I've thought before, like, I've always wondered, like, in a parallel universe, like, what would like Final Fantasy VII have looked like as a really good sprite art game, like Xenogears or something like that? And and I think it would have been, I think it would have been better. I think FMV cutscenes could have still been a thing, and someone could argue, okay, but then it would be so jarring going from the 2D sprites to the 3D models and the pre-render, but like, also it's a big leap to go from the Play-Doh models to the pre-rendered cutscene models, so it's kind of like, I don't know, I don't really agree with that point, I guess. I'm just arguing with myself, hypothetical people in my head right now, but
it's okay.
Yeah, but that's my hot take on all that. I think we did 3D too early, and I think we missed very good opportunities to have a pinnacle of 2D games.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, because another point too that people don't talk about is that the hardware itself wasn't there either. Like, don't get me wrong, the N64 was a monster of its time. Like, the specs and everything, if you look at it through the lens of the 90s when it was coming out, beast of a console, but I don't think 3D should have been the focus. I think some things could have been trimmed and dialed back, and like you said, it could have been just like a monster SNES, supercharged SNES. Because, I mean, we got some phenomenal games on the SNES, and games that, like, as far as visually, still hold up to this day. And that's just a testament of good art direction and the proper design influences in the game itself. Yeah, you know, it's fun. I've never heard that point before, that we did 3D too early. But I am going to come over to your side of the fence, because I do think...
Join my cult.
Yes, I will come over to your side. I think we did 3D too early. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I like that.
I think
I'm gonna stand on my side of the fence over here. I do think we might have done 3D a little too early, but at the same time, kind of going back to my previous statement, game devs were just hitting against that wall of what the system could do. Because we had it on N64 and PS1, we figured out how to do draw calls. We figured out how to do occlusion calling, which is what Crash Bandicoot 1 did and Spyro 1 did for their giant worlds. We figured out how to plaster textures and what texture swimming was so that we could fix it with the PS2. There's just so many things that came from those limitations that the consoles had, even including lighting. Lighting was huge in terms of upgrading between consoles and variations of it. That it would just, it's almost unthinkable of where we would be at currently if we just went with what the console was capable of doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I actually said earlier, that's a point someone brought up to me, a real person, not my hypothetical brain people I'm arguing with, but a real person actually told me. They said basically what you said. They said that you know, if you hadn't done that and pushed those limits, then, you know, PlayStation 2 games would have looked awful because they didn't know how to make 3D. You know, it's kind of like, I think the transition would have been rough no matter what generation it was on.
That's true.
I do think it probably would have been better to do it on PS2, but I do agree it would have been rough no matter what, because at that point most people had never even seen like a 3D game, so let alone know how to make it, and, you know, get people that know how to model, and, you know, yeah. So I agree. Yeah. I agree with you to an extent, for sure.
Definitely, and I agree with you guys too for an extent as well.
No, you already took your place. Get the tomatoes. Throw the tomatoes over.
I feel like I really don't have strong enough of an opinion on this. I could go either way. I will stand on the fence.
We kind of have come kind of full. I don't want to say we've come full circle, but it makes me so happy to see HD 2D becoming like a new style now. Because I don't know if you guys remember when Octopath Traveler was first announced, it was pretty not decisive. It was pretty divisive as far as the art style and stuff went. And some people still aren't fans of it, but personally, I love the look of HD 2D. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think just like high def diorama styled art environments with like the characters and like all the post processing, depth of field, and occlusion, that looks really good together. It's you know, it's almost like how older people look back on those games. Like, I talked to my father not too long ago, and he swears up and down that games he played on Nintendo and Super Nintendo looked like stuff like Triangle Strategy and Octopath today. Really funny, but
I'm the old person. I agree with that. Yeah.
Is that how it looked to you when you think back?
Yeah, I mean, that's like when I think about like Chrono Trigger, like it looked that good to me, you know, when I was playing it.
The game still looks good to this day, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love HD2D. That's all I had to say. Nothing relevant. I want more.
For sure. I definitely agree with that, actually. It's like we've come full circle. And even with like 2D games, there's been a resurgence of 2D games recently, as well as 3D platforms, which has just warmed my heart entirely. I miss the days of Banjo-Kazooie, I really do, and I can relive those now. It's very nice.
Good, pretty good. Awesome. Well, if anyone has any other points, I guess we can move on to our next repeat question. So we talked about this quite a bit, and it's still relevant. I don't think this question will ever not be relevant, but it says the barrier of entry for game development has lowered significantly over the years. Though in light of this, many projects are still failing. And the $1 million question is why. I had the sub questions down. What's the number one killer of indie projects? And is this an avoidable aspect, or are a majority of projects essentially destined to fail? Anyone can take it.
I'll take the swing at this one first, I guess. This will be kind of a repeat if we ever do show that first episode, but getting goals in the scope right for you, I think that's the most important thing to do. Game dev is kind of foreign, and a lot of people coming in, they'll be like, I want to make a game, and then you're like, well, what's a UV? What are polygons? Rigid bodies? I have no idea. What is C# even? And tutorials can really only get you so far until you start to really learn and nail down what exactly are they doing, what's going on, how do you manipulate it to what you need for your game or your idea. And I think definitely another thing is the ability to prolong gratification. That's probably one of the biggest number one killers to indie projects. We all love that gold star, but one of the things that we got to do is be able to go a lengthy amount of time without getting that gold star. The more you do game dev, the more diminishing it's going to be, especially in the polishing stage. I don't know if Matt experienced that during Video Game Fables, but usually when you hit a certain point, your game is technically finished, and then it's just polish, making it look nice. And the more you polish it, the less return you're going to get.
Yeah, for sure.
And the other one was the avoidable aspects. Definitely stick with the group. I want to give a shout out to Paperverse as well, because this is an awesome group of fans and game developers alike. Having the ability to go through the tunnel of making a game with friends will always make it a better experience and travel. And being able to be there when the hardships gets harder and the good ships gets gooder, it's going to make that ability to just go through the sludge much easier.
Yeah, I 100% agree with your last point there. I joined Paperverse kind of later in development. I think it was, what would that have been, like a year and a half before I released, I think, something like that. And I had already been developing for years before that. So like the stark difference between having a group of people to help out versus not, like a support group basically, even if it's just to go in there and complain about something that no one else in my life would actually understand. Like I can tell, my partner, my family or whatever, that I can't find the reason for an error in my code, and they're going to sympathize and help me, but it's nice to also talk to someone who actually knows the actual problem and has been in that specific spot,
Yeah, definitely.
And I tell people a lot actually in other like podcasts I've done and stuff. They say like, what's been most helpful for you, and I always give a little shout out to Paperverse because it's the first like game dev group I've been a part of, and it's especially if you're a solo dev, like 100% especially if you're a solo dev, because you don't realize how many things would be helped if you could talk to other game developers about it, whether it's practically or even just emotional support, you know what I mean? But also like more for the actual question, I do think it's good that it's easier to make games now, but it's also bad. And I think, I think most people know the reasons for that. It's just the sheer number of games coming out. And the fact that it is easier, you're getting also a lot of bad games coming out. So it's not only more, like, even if it was like, I think what's the numbers on Steam, like 12,000 games a year or something. It's something insane.
Yeah.
Even if it was like, oh, now there's 12,000 really good games coming out, that would also hurt you as a developer, because you're competing for attention, and you're competing for views, and you're competing for playtime, and you're competing for streamers and YouTubers and stuff like that. But not only that, it's just there's a lot of bad games coming out too, and it's like, and we're all gamers too, most game developers are gamers as well, so we see it from both sides, which is helpful, because it's like, when I'm looking for a game, it's I'm not just going to wander aimlessly. I'm going to like look to sources and say like, what's a good game, because there's too many games. There's just absolutely too many games coming out. And like, I remember when Video Game Fables came out, that was July 15th, and I had thought it was a pretty a pretty slow day for Steam. Like I looked at like upcoming releases, and then like the next day or whatever, I was curious and I was looking, and there was like at least like 50 games coming out that exact same day, and I was like, what are these games? Where did they come from? Like what is going on? Like it's insane, and I think I'm glad it's easier now, and I wouldn't sacrifice that, but boy oh boy does it have some heavy caveats with it.
Definitely, and I really do feel that as well too, especially with Mogdu coming up with potential things in the future here, with like Kickstarter and other crowdfunding sources, and even when we go to sell, it frightens me because I know there's going to be so much competition out there, especially on platforms. You can't just throw it and expect the platform to do the selling anymore. If you go on Switch, there's like 5 new games every single day. If you go on Steam, like you mentioned, there's like the 50 games on there. Like, what the heck, man? Mm-hmm. It's so far to marketing now. It's just insane.
Yeah, yep. I think it's good people have the opportunity, but I don't know. We gotta do something. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is.
It can feel just overwhelming. Like how do all these games even get made this fast? Because it can seem like just making one game takes forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's insane. But I think it is a good thing that we have groups like Paperverse and Wholesome Games, and just these groups that they pick a niche and that's what they focus on. Like I know we're Paperverse games, games inspired by Paper Mario in any way, shape, or form, and that's what we do, and that's what we stick to. And we talked about this last time, but it works. It works. People like having something that's familiar. People like having something that's stable. So being able to provide that little piece of stability in this giant sea of uncertainty, I think it's very helpful. That's why a lot of people still refer to articles and look for influencers and people to offer their own I don't want to say explanations, but their own recommendations. It's very important. It really is. Somebody needs to be a pillar in this market, or we're all going to be tossed to and fro.
Something interesting I just was thinking when you were talking about that, an interesting aspect of the industry in general is that if you look back and compare it to now, the idea of a game genre has just exploded. So like back in the day, like you didn't need anything other than RPG, action, arcade, simulation, maybe. You know what I mean? You had these very, very generalized categories because you were getting 100 games coming out a year or something like that at most. You know what I mean? It was a very small market, and just with the sheer volume of games that are coming out now, the industry naturally had to start specializing more. Now you have, if you look back at it, it's kind of funny because now you have you look on Steam or whatever, you have like cute farming RPGs, like that's a whole genre. You know what I mean? And then you have like walking simulators, that's a whole genre. You have it's just, I don't know, it's a very interesting to look at that and how genres as a whole have changed because they had to evolve to and adapt to what was going on.
Very well said. That's actually funny because we mentioned that too last time, if I'm not mistaken, because I believe I asked about if you consider Paperverse a subgenre or not, and we all thought we did. I mean, it pretty much is, but yeah, Matt, you hit the nail on its head. As time moves on and as the industry has grown, because I think now video games, it is the largest entertainment industry by revenue, if I'm not mistaken. It surpassed movies and television. So that is a lot of money coming in and out and a lot of eyes and people, watching and looking. So, specializing is good. I think that is good in this sense. And as long as we keep at it and be consistent, I do think eventually we'll find success. It's hard because, it's a very long tunnel and the light is very, very small, but eventually we'll get to the end.
Definitely. Also, paper games. Let's make it a subgenre, guys. Paper games. Let's go.
Yeah.
Or Paperverse. If you go on Steam, just start adding it, because you can add your own tags to games. Like I've added it to everyone who's on Steam right now, I've done it myself, just Paperverse.
Mhm.
Hopefully, over time, we can make it an actual thing. That'd be cool.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean, think about kind of going back to what I was saying. Can you imagine as a gamer, like from the gamer's point of view, going on Steam and just looking through like the RPG category and trying to find something you like? It's like it's just insane. All the subgenres we have to have. Back in the day, it'd be like, okay, I like RPGs. Let's see what do we have coming out this year. There's like 3 RPGs coming out. It's easier to.
Maybe
digest.
sword guy or sword guy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, the growth is good, but at the same time, you said it comes with heavy caveats. Having to sift through everything that comes out is it can be a pain at times. And Charles, you brought up a good point too. It's not just like PC or mobile now. Everywhere, like games are releasing, by the dozens almost every day. Well, I guess except for PlayStation, they still got a pretty slow burn. But everywhere but PlayStation, games are still releasing at a really fast rate, so it is difficult to keep up. Most of the time, I'm asking you guys, or I'll be like, hey, who's been playing something, or I'll see what's going on in my own circles. But that's it. It's hard to find new stuff. It really is. Wow, very excellent, very excellent. Actually, it's actually a good pivot to our next question about game development. And again, another repeat, but it says, can anyone make a game? The market is competitive and hungry to swallow devs, but if given the ample resources, time, and support, could literally anyone make a good game? Now, for those who didn't get the question, basically all I'm asking is that if I gave a random guy on the street $4 billion to make a good video game, could he do it? If everyone had all the resources in the world to make something, could it be done? And I always get different answers when I ask people this, but I'm just curious. Charles, what do you think? Like, again.
For sure. So kind of going back to the last question, I think it's a good thing that a lot of people can make games now. And I think definitely given the ability, pretty much anybody could make a game at this point. And a good game at that if they give it all of their time and manpower behind it. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Definitely. And I think they could definitely make a good game at that as well, too. And I am very happy that they can. The reason being is because all of us have a little story to tell. And I feel like that's kind of telling that story a little bit. It's giving it the ability to be interactive and interesting versus just making a novel or a comic book.
I want to add on to that because similarly, I think it's amazing that someone with a very different background from me could make a very interesting game that I could enjoy because I could maybe see into their perspective because I'm sure it would bleed into their game design a little bit. But at the same time, I guess I see it like art where, or like being an artist, being an illustrator, comic book artist or whatever. Like you have to want to do that and you have to enjoy the process of doing it. I guess you could say if you gave someone enough money, they could just hire a bunch of people to make a game. But assuming that person had to do at least a little bit of the work themselves, then I think you have to sort of enjoy something about the process, even if it's just a little part of the process. You can't absolutely hate touching your computer and opening a program.
Definitely. Yeah. You need to want to make the game versus utilizing something else or doing something else entirely.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it's you kind of get how deep does the question go, but I think anyone could technically be capable, but I think there has to be a desire to do it, you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, I guess like you said, if you gave someone a bunch of money and said, I'll give you a bunch of money if you make this game or something, I think anyone could. It would just take a lot of research, and I was thinking more in terms of imagining my mom or something who's never played video games. She doesn't care about video games. She barely knows how to get on Facebook. She doesn't know how to text on her smartphone. And like, so it's like, I'm making it very personal. I'm thinking about my mom. Sorry, mom, if you ever listen to this, but it's just like, I can't imagine her ever being capable of making a game, because she would have to spend years doing research on like, what's a video game? What makes, what makes a video game good? And I guess, like you said, like it'd be possible. But I think there's a big gap of people who would need to do significantly more research and work and find motivation. I think there's like a big gap. I think there is a separation. There's people who could definitely make a good game, and then there's people who would have to have an insane amount of motivation or reason to do it, and they would have to put in an unbelievable amount of time and work to even get started where that other half of the people would be, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's pretty good. I actually, I don't think anyone could, even if they had unlimited resources, because I mean, we have people that have been in the industry for years now, have their own studios, work at major firms, and they still don't make good games with a team of 100 people. So
that's a good point.
What does that tell you about a random person off the street? If you gave them the budget of the newest Call of Duty game, could they make a good game? I don't think they could, because there's a lot of moving parts in game development.
Know-how.
Yeah, know-how, management, being efficient with your resources, because it's just a lot. And I said that for a reason, because I get kind of frustrated with the AAA industry a lot, because there's like a lot of choices they make that you would think wouldn't be good for the industry or just wouldn't be good in general. They still do, and it frustrates me. It really does, because I love video games and I love this market and whatnot, but I'm only one guy. It's only so much I can do. So a lot of times I just sit back angrily shaking my fist like, how could they do that?
I guess it's the same thing that people have been dealing with for movies before video games were a thing. You'll find so many people that are like, that movie is terrible. They didn't use their actors right, and they didn't do this right. It's just one of those things where it's like, there will always be bad media.
Definitely, and especially with games. It's surprising that you say that, Jeeves, because more often than not, the studio themselves are shaking their fist in the air in the same action. A lot of times in the bigger studios, it's not the studio themselves that are making the call, but rather the shareholders, the CEOs, and the people who launder the money that actually pay for the studio.
No, it's sad. It really is. But, I mean, that's life. That's why indies exist, That's why we're here.
Yup, that's why I love the indie life.
It's such a burden to carry the game industry on our backs, isn't it?
Wow.
We really are. Like you said, I know you say it as a joke, but we really are. Honestly, because could you imagine like there being no indie developers? All you had was what came out of the major publishing houses.
Very sad.
That would suck. All you get is FIFA, Call of Duty, whatever gems that our friends over East give us, But that's pretty rough, That's not a lot of choice.
Limited.
That's not a lot of choice at all. So I'm very thankful for my indie brethren, those who sacrifice their time and resources to give us great experiences.
Yes. And also just the people that do something niche, like sometimes you'll just, have a more profound experience with something niche, even though you and 5 other people get that and nobody else does.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
That's how I feel.
Yeah,
about,
there's
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Charles.
No, you're good. I'm sorry. There's been so many small indie games that I've been like, oh, hey, what's this game? I'm going to try it out. And I got it for a cheap price, and I'm just astounded by how creative or how interesting or how it tells the story across to the player in such a warm and inviting way.
Yeah, I'm actually opening my Steam library now because I need to find what this game is called in my wish list, because I brought it up a little while ago and no one knew what I was talking about, and I'm so sad because it's like a really, really great retro 3D platformer. What is it called? Oh yeah, Lumistus. It's supposed to be coming soon on Steam. I played the demo. Super duper fun. But it's like a PS1 styled Sega Saturn 3D platformer. Again, no one knows what I'm talking about. But I had so much fun with the demo. I've been following the development really close. And I hope it does really, really well. Because it's just a blast. And that's kind of the thing, those little niche experiences that you and a few others share. They're super special.
Yeah.
Excellent. You guys have any small games like that? And you keep up with or anything that no one else seems to know?
I can't think of any off the top of my head. Like I said, I've been playing games during development of Video Game Fables, but I was a workaholic and I didn't have much time, unfortunately, to really be a gamer as much. And like I said, I'm trying to get that back again and have that joy of gaming again. But I feel like I haven't really seen too many. I think, one that it's pretty popular, but I haven't seen it talk about too much in mainstream. It's called Athenian Rhapsody. I don't know if you guys seen that.
I've actually never heard of it.
Yeah, definitely look it up. It's kind of like Earthbound-ish, Undertale-ish, Pokemon-ish. It's kind of hard to explain, but I follow the developer on TikTok, and he's really cool, and he's very nice, and he's a really good artist, and he's putting his passion into this, and it's like a really, it's just looks like a fantastic game, and it's surprising that it's made by one person, too. Yeah, so something like that. That's definitely a smaller game. I think it'll definitely do very well. I think, the Undertale-ish community will pick it up, and I think he'll do really well. I hope so, at least. I know it's not a small game necessarily because it seems to be getting a lot of mainstream attention, but Sea of Stars is one of my my most anticipated indie games. I'm obsessed with it. I really want to play it. Have you guys heard of that?
Never heard of that one either.
Oh, well, there you go. So
I feel like I have heard of it. I'll look it up.
Yeah, same.
I might have seen it.
You've probably seen it, but maybe you don't know the name. It looks very much like Chrono Trigger. It's a sprite-based RPG, and it just looks really good. And yeah, so those are two games that I guess maybe I thought they were more known than they were because here I am talking to you guys, and you're not familiar with them. I just kind of assumed.
Yeah,
but I think that's
amazing though.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and I think that's
what? I'm sorry.
Sea of Stars.
Sea of Stars. Oh, not Sea of Thieves.
I think that kind of brings up another point too, is that it's kind of sad because it's amazing how much marketing comes into play because there's some games that you assume are very successful. You see it and you're like, wow, this is amazing. I'm sure everyone knows about this. And then it has 2 reviews on Steam after 2 years. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a sad thing to see sometimes. And then you'll see a game that's complete trash and it's very successful and making millions of dollars. It's kind of, it's sad to see. I've talked about when I was having my little mental breakdowns about stressing out about marketing and stuff. It's it's a lot of people think it's a meritocracy where you get exactly as many sales as the amount of work you put in or how good your game is. Or people say if your game isn't selling well, it's because it's not good, That's just not true. It's not a meritocracy. It's half luck. It's half putting in work on marketing. It's, there's a lot of aspects at play there. So it just makes me sad when I see a really beautiful game that just deserves all the attention and success and it's just not getting it,
Yeah.
Sure.
Which is sadly very common.
It is. It's way too common, which is just downright sad. I guess for me, one of the smaller indie games that I absolutely adore and loved was Titan Souls. But I feel like, at least in my circle, I only know of one person that knows about it. Nobody else knows it even exists. And it's one of the more interesting Dark Souls-esque titles where you're top-down, 2D game, you have one arrow, and you have one hit, and that's it.
Dang.
Yes, it's a very cool game. It has a lot of story behind it of how it does things. It's very unique in the fact that it's a boss marathon game essentially. So you're going through boss room after boss room after boss room, and each boss has a different mechanic tied to it that you have to kind of figure out with your arrow in a puzzle sort of scheme.
It's kind of funny. You said Titan Souls?
Yeah, it's a pretty old one. I think it was out for PS4 a while ago. I believe I believe it's free on streaming.
Ew, streaming. I don't stream anything. This is how for time.
You know, I would agree with you. I tried it out on PS5 though recently, and it worked. It surprised me. It actually worked.
The game worked or streaming?
The game and streaming. I played a couple of like high action games like Devil May Cry and third person shooter, and they worked flawlessly, which really surprised me.
Oh, that's good. I mean, for me, all the time it's the principle of the thing. I just want to have my games on a hard drive or SSD, just native files, even if they perform worse. Like, use the Switch as an example. I hate the cloud versions on the Switch. I'd rather take a game like Doom Eternal that runs 720p dynamic with like 30 FPS than play the game, through the cloud at 4K 120, but, not be able to take it with me, or if the server shuts down, not have access to it anymore. I don't know. I'm old soul. I just don't like cloud services.
I feel you there. I still like to get the physical copy if I can.
I know you probably definitely don't like cloud services, Matt.
Are you saying because I'm an old man, or for another reason?
Because you're old man. Sorry.
Yeah, you got it actually. Well, yeah, I haven't really tried it, so I don't want to knock it, but there's a lot of issues in my mind because it's like, the issue of like offline play, not having access to offline play or portability, or they could just take away your games whenever, they could take away your games whenever they want. And I mean, we've already seen that on Steam even, which isn't streaming games. It's just digital, not physical. But how much easier would that be on a streaming service? They can just say, no, you can't play this game anymore. So I have a lot of concerns about it, and I'm not 100% opposed to it. I just think it's maybe not so much for me.
Did you see what happened? We all know Stadia's closing down and everything. But did you see what happened to like the guy that had like 6,000 hours in Red Dead Redemption 2? And he's begging. No. Yeah, he's like literally begging Rockstar to do a character transfer so he can save all his progress. Because he's gonna lose 6,000 hours of game time once Stadia is done. Yeah. If that's not a horror story about streaming, I don't know what is. Like, could you imagine 6,000 hours in a game and then it's just like, okay, it's all gone. I'd be definitely gutted. I'd probably never pick up a controller again after that.
Yeah, that's kind of one of the scenarios, we imagine as a pitfall of this kind of thing, and then it's like it actually happens. Like, okay, that wasn't just an unfounded fear,
Not only that, but from like a developer standpoint, games now have very long rat tails, and these rat tails and sales can expand into greater sales than the initial sale of the game. And to have a game ripped off of your app store due to either legal reasons or something else completely different, which halts all sales and stops all sales for future usually, it's disheartening, especially to the players, especially to the developers, especially to those who spent so much time and effort into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's perfect. Perfect like reasoning, again, you mentioned Steam, Matt. They took off the old Grand Theft Auto games, Rockstar did, because they wanted to sell the definitive edition ones. And we all know how that went. So, I have those games in my library already, so I can still play them because I had them downloaded. But now new people can't go and experience them because they've been removed. Yeah. So that's another concern that's, we have to face in this new digital age. I miss physical media.
And then you get into game preservation concepts, and there's games that will be lost forever, if there's no way to preserve them. And I mean, we've seen where a lot of even AAA companies, like big indie development companies, have dropped the ball and just completely abandoned a game in a form where it's like literally no way to possibly play it. And then you have the people who are usually demonized, you know, people who do like emulation and dump ROMs and stuff like that, and they're basically the heroes that are preserving art that this company made, and the company's like attacking them for preserving something that they threw in the trash. It's a very weird era to be in right now. It's very bizarre because like it's wild to see sometimes.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you attacking these people who are preserving something that you literally are choosing to not have any way to profit off of, and they're not profiting off it either? It's like, what are you doing? Like, leave them alone.
Yeah, it's
They should be
all very
thanking them.
nuanced. It's all very nuanced when it comes to that kind of stuff. It sucks. It really does. You know, I can kind of see both sides, but I'll always lean more towards game preservation because we've already lost a lot of stuff. Like, what was the company? A lot of Data East, like you know, the guys that did like what was the game? Dino Joe? No, that's what the game was called. Joe and Mac. You know,
Joe and Mac.
Joe and Mac, right? Yeah, the company that made those games. Some of their catalog is like original catalog is gone forever, like just gone.
Yeah,
you know, you can't get it back unless you go in a time machine. So that's very important. Super important. I mean, I don't know how much you guys feel, but I'll always lean towards game preservation.
Yeah, 100%. Kind of maybe off topic. I don't want to get on too big of a trail, but talking about like streaming is kind of relevant, and game preservation very relevant to both topics. Do you guys know about the Satellaview?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's for anyone who doesn't know, I think it was the SNES, and it was like you would connect it to the internet, and I don't 100% understand it, but there would be like games that you could download, and they were just like temporary games. They'd like put them up for like a week or something, and you could download these games. And some of them were even like modified versions of the games. Like there was I think there was a remake of the original Zelda, I believe, with like updated graphics, and it had characters from some like Japanese cartoon or something. I don't know what it was, but that's a very, very interesting side. If you want to know about like game preservation and a very early attempt at kind of a game streaming service, definitely look into Satellaview. It's extremely fascinating. And there's been people, and there's stuff that's just completely lost because it was literally just like streamed to consoles for, not streamed in the sense that you're playing on a cloud, but you would download a temporary game essentially. It was very fascinating.
Yeah, they sorry, I was just about to say they kind of use the same technology that they did for China when they would give you like the downloadable packs for I believe it was the Q over there, the N64 essentially.
Yeah.
You go to stations, kiosks, download the game, then play it. The IntelliSense, that was such a shame, and it's really interesting. People found cartridges of certain episodes and they went to go preserve it, and good gosh, it's very costly to do that now.
You're talking about 'cause a lot of that kiosk technology has like gone bad, or just the amount of finagling you have to do to just get it up to modern standards is ridiculous. Like he brought up Legend of Zelda, but for me, F-Zero, they had a whole like a Satellaview F-Zero tournament where like players would play with this special version of F-Zero, and you know it would change after every match or whatever, or something like that. And I don't think that was preserved. I know some things from Satellaview have been preserved, but I don't think that was, and that's kind of sad because it was like basically SNES F-Zero 2 kind of. Now it's gone.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So sad, makes you cry. I love SNES F-Zero, so sad. But yeah, you know, game preservation is very important because even it's history, you know. Even like for the smallest game, the smallest shovelware thing, I still think doesn't deserve to be just deleted forever and just gone. You know, someone still made it, you know, whether good or bad. I think it should be somewhere. I mean,
yeah,
you know, for Lord's sake, they even preserved like I think that the entire Wii catalog from the Wii shop was preserved. last I checked, which is just amazing to me because I was sure that was just gonna be gone forever.
Yeah.
It's great. So hopefully the same thing can be done with 3DS and Wii U as time goes forward, because there are a lot of good games on there that are just stuck there, haven't been ported. They're just there, and for them to be gone would be a travesty.
Definitely. Fingers crossed.
I'm praying every night, honestly, because you talk about 3DS, like there are like a lot of sleeper hits and hidden gems on the 3DS, on eShop specifically. Obviously, this is anecdotal. I can't go back and do the math without having the raw data set. But I think as far as like the quality game to shovelware ratio is lower than average, I think, for 3DS. Don't get me wrong, they still have shovelware, but I think as far as like good games themselves to just, your shovelware type chunk, it's a little lower than other platforms, I would say. Anecdotal, of course. I can't prove it without having the actual data set, but that's just what I imagine from the times I've spent scrolling through the library. But excellent points all around. That just gets my heartstrings going. Game preservation. I can get on my soapbox and talk about that like all day.
Yeah, it's very important and very interesting.
So that kind of ties into just like our last little thoughts. If there's anything you guys wanted to bring up or any tangential questions you wanted to propose, now's the time.
I feel like I had some, and then they just completely flew out of my brain.
Yeah, honestly, we covered a lot of stuff that I think is just good advice for just getting an idea of the games industry. Those the sort of like interview questions are very interesting, because I wonder if someone will listen to this and then go in to do an interview and get asked that exact question.
Yeah, it's
That
a
would
good
be
chance
crazy.
they would probably.
Hint, hint, I've actually been asked a few of these. They're real questions, guys.
Yeah.
We have a victim of it right here.
Yo.
Well, for me, I guess a little tangential question I could propose. Like I've said a couple times, love computer hardware, and I also love the Steam Deck and Valve. We talked about this. I forgot when it was, Charles. We talked about this, but just platform economics in general, and I think the point of contention last time we spoke, I forgot who it was. It wasn't just you, but it was about the cut that they do versus Epic's like 8812, and I would love a larger cut from game sales on Steam, but I was playing devil's advocate and I thought it was fine that they're doing 730 because now they are a hardware vendor essentially, because Sony, Microsoft, Nintendo, it's the same 70-30 cut, but at the same time, what you're buying into is a ecosystem and essentially a platform for their hardware, which in my opinion is evens out pretty fair when you look at install size and playtime and all those kind of metrics. Now before, people were kind of, people kind of still are against the 70-30 cut on Steam, but I feel like it's justified now because now that we have the deck and eventually that line of systems, you're looking at a fixed hardware target with its own ecosystem. Games are verified for the platform, boosted in Steam's algorithm, and as far as how the console itself works, I guess I can't say the console, but as far as how the device itself works, it's very in line with what we've seen from other hardware manufacturers and how they do business. So I think the cut is justified if it's pushing an actual physical platform like the deck, like Xbox, Switch, etc., etc., etc. I forgot who it was that spoke with us. They did not agree. I can't remember. It was a conversation so long ago. But what do you guys think now? That's what's most important.
Oh, I was sitting here thinking, where did that conversation pop up? And I think I did do remember it now. I'm still very much on the side that I think the 70-30 cut is totally fair. Just because that 30... A lot of people don't realize that there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And the reason why they're taking that 30% is not to be rude. It is to make a little bit of money, but it's really to pay for all the marketing, all of the additional things that you're essentially utilizing, including their storefront, the resources to run that store page, which is a bit considering how many store pages there are out there, and to run that continuously forever and always, it takes money, essentially. Definitely fair. I like the 70-30. It's nice. I would love to have more, but you're still getting a hefty chunk, which is nice.
Yeah, I feel like the 70-30 is a very, very, very common number. And I'm not exactly sure where it originated or like what the logic behind it is, or if there's like actual analytics to explain like where it came from. I don't know the history of 70-30, but I see that on almost any storefront ever for anything. Like I think that's what you'll get on like Apple Store probably too. So I had like one app on Apple, and I think it was 70-30. So I don't really know if it's necessarily like good or bad, but I think people don't understand that is the standard. So it's like, yeah, you can get into a discussion about whether it's right or not, but like it is normal, I guess I should say. I think it's important for people to understand that as well. Yeah, I mean, I would say it's pretty fair. Obviously, I'd like more, but like I don't know, who wouldn't want more. I don't know. I don't have a huge problem with it, honestly.
It's good. Christian, you have any thoughts about the platform ref split?
Really, I'll be honest, a lot of this stuff is like, Mogrimera is my first big game project, so I feel like my thoughts on these things are going to change after, we've made Mogrimera public and published it and all that stuff. So I don't know. It's hard for me to have an opinion on something that I just have no idea what all is going into it, honestly.
It's quite all right. Yeah, because what I proposed last time we had this discussion, man, I wish I could remember exactly, but I said something along the lines of, okay, we have Steam, we have Epic, both are storefronts, but would you really, as a developer, give up all the conveniences, the SDKs, the physical hardware itself, for a larger cut on Epic? Because you do get a larger cut. It's $88.12 on the Epic Game Store. The library is more curated because they don't, it's not open. But are you really going to give up what you get on Steam to go to Epic for that larger cut? Personally, I said, heck no. There's no way I would do that. Even if they did because you get a little bonus for being an Unreal Engine developer. Mm-hmm. But I still wouldn't take the exclusivity to lose all the conveniences on Steam. I just wouldn't do it.
I think for me personally, I would have to see, because I'm a very data-minded person. I try not to be if I'm going to be anecdotal about something, I'll put a big hard disclaimer and be like, yeah, this is an anecdotal experience, but I'd like to see data on it. So I feel like I don't have the data to have an opinion of it if I would do for example, an Epic exclusive or put it on Epic even just alongside Steam. I don't have the data to form a really good opinion on that. But I do think it wouldn't hurt to have it on both. I think people could try that. I mean, I guess you could argue that maybe there could be a downside to having it on Epic and Steam in the sense that maybe more people be buying it on... If more people buy on Epic, that's less people buying it on Steam, which results in less visibility for you, which could result in more sales. So there's so many factors that go into it, so much math and statistics that would go into it, so it's hard for me to make a call on that.
I think doing both would be all right. I mean, that's a possibility, yes. But if given the choice, I'd get on as many platforms as I could, honestly. Mm-hmm. If given the choice, if I had to pick one, if I was forced to pick a side, you know how they do exclusivity deals, okay, you can come to us, but you're locked for 6 months or 9 months, whatever. I would personally just stay on Steam.
Yeah, I would too. Yeah, if you look at it that way, I definitely agree.
Yeah. Pretty good points.
Definitely. I just want to throw in there, thank you so much again for the great opportunity to speak. We're also super excited to be in episode 2. That's really awesome / episode 1. I'm just glad that we get to help inspire so many devs coming up with like ingenuity, thoughts, and opinions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you guys aboard too, and thank you again, Matt, for joining. Perfect segue into just our outro and saying goodbye. You guys, please let everybody know where they can find you, socials, Discord, all that jazz.
Definitely. You can find us, the Mogdu team, Charles and Kristen Tree, at Paperverse Discord, as well as Twitter, Instagram, and soon Steam. Just look up Mogrimera or Cortez Productions, and you'll find us. Feel free to drop us a private message or email at support@cortezproductions.org as well if you have any additional questions, feedbacks, or inquiries. The links will be hopefully in the description.
Yes, they will.
Is it my turn?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so you can find me on most social media. I'm most active on Twitter. It'd be Momiji Studios. You could search for Video Game Fables and I'd be one of the people posting about it nonstop, so you could find me that way. But yeah, you can find me on pretty much any social media under Momiji Studios. It's MOMIJI Studios. Most important place you could find me, though, is by going to my Steam page and purchasing Video Game Fables. That would be the best way to help me for sure. I always try to tell people, like, the most important thing for a small developer like me is just word of mouth. So literally just telling a friend about the game that you think might be interested, that's really cool for me, even if it's just one person, or posting about it on social media, even if you don't have a big following, or telling content creators about the game because they might not have seen it, But yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. That's probably the best place to keep up with me and what I'm doing and my hot takes and spicy video game opinions like you've heard here today.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Thank you guys so much. That's going to be it for this episode. Ooh, well, almost 3 hours. That's amazing. And it's going to be a pain on my fingers to edit, but looking forward to it. Thank you guys so much for joining.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having me, Jeeve. Appreciate it.
I was worried you'd be too big for me. You've already hit the big time.
You know how I am.
Remember us little guys. No.
Exactly.
I was gonna be riding around my Bugatti tonight, but I decided to see the little people today.
We appreciate you for it. Thank you guys so much. That's gonna be it. And thank you all for listening. We greatly appreciate it and hope to see you in the next episode. Ciao.
Have a good one.